Clara Whitmore set her suitcase down in the middle of Silver Creek's main street, straightened her spine, and looked the man who had promised to marry her dead in the eye. "Say it louder," she said. "Say it so they all hear you." Harlan Walker turned his hat in his hands and told her he had changed his mind. 40 people watched her stand there with 900 miles of road dust on her hem and nowhere left in this world to go. And behind Harlan, his older brother took one slow step forward. If a story like this one moves, you subscribe to the channel and stay with me all the way to the end. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from tonight so I can see just how far this story has traveled. The stagecoach had not been stopped a full minute before Clara Whitmore understood that something was wrong. She had rehearsed the moment for 11 days. She had rehearsed it in Missouri and in Kansas, and on the hard bench of a coach that smelled of tobacco and horse sweat, and every time she rehearsed it, the man in her mind removed his hat and smiled and said her name like it belonged in his mouth. The man on the boardwalk did not smile. He did not step down. He stood with his hat already in his hands, twisting the brim, and he would not look at her. "Mr. Walker," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Harlan Walker." "That's right." She waited. The driver dropped her trunk into the street, and it landed with a sound like a door closing. "Then I expect you know who I am?" she said. Harlan Walker looked at his boots. He was younger than she had pictured him, and softer in the face, and his hands were not the hands of a man who wrote what he had written to her. She noticed that first and did not know why. "I know who you are," he said. "Say my name." "Ma'am." "Say it, Mr. Walker. I have come 900 miles. I would like to hear a man in this territory say my name out loud." His jaw worked. "Miss Whitmore." "Clara," she said. "In your letters it was Clara." That was when she heard the town go quiet behind her. Not all at once. It emptied of noise the way a room empties of air in stages, the mercantile porch first, then the men at the rail, then the women under the awning with their baskets still in their arms. Harlan Walker looked up at last, and Clara saw in his eyes the thing she had been refusing to see for a full minute, and her stomach went cold. "I have changed my mind," he said. She did not move. "I'm sorry," he said. "I ought to have wired you. There wasn't time, and I didn't rightly know how to say it in a wire." "You have changed your mind," Clara repeated. "Yes, ma'am." "About marrying me?" "Yes, ma'am." A woman behind her made a small sound, the kind a person makes when they have been handed something delicious and are pretending to be appalled by it. Clara set her suitcase down. She did it carefully. She squared it with the toe of her shoe, and she straightened, and she felt every eye in Silver Creek land on her back like a hand. "Say it louder," she said. "Ma'am, you said it to your boots. Say it to me. Say it so they all hear you, since they've already stopped their business to listen. Go on. They'll have it by supper anyhow. Let them have it right." Harlan Walker's face went red from the collar up. "Miss Whitmore, I don't—" "You wrote me 14 letters. I know it. You wrote that a woman with a good head and a straight back was worth more to a man out here than a woman with money. You wrote that in November. I have it in my trunk. It's in my trunk right there in the street." "Miss Whitmore, you sent me the fare," Clara said. $41. I sold my mother's sewing machine and my father's watch to make up the rest because I would not come to a man in debt to him. Do you understand what I am telling you? I have no house. I gave up my post at the school. There is not a bed east of here with my name on it." "I'm sorry," Harlan said again, and it came out wretched. "Sorry doesn't buy a coach seat." "I know it." "Then look at me while you do it." He looked at her. He was crying, or near enough to it, and that was somehow the worst part because a cruel man she could have hated cleanly. "Why?" she said. He opened his mouth. He shut it. "Why, Mr. Walker?" "I ain't the man you think I am," he said. "That," Clara said, "is the only honest sentence you have spoken since I got off that coach." And then, because she could not stand there another second with the town drinking her down like cold water, she bent for her suitcase. That was when a voice came from the far end of the boardwalk. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Harlan! Everything in the street turned toward it. The man who had spoken was older. Broad through the shoulders, gray coming in at the temples, a week of weather on his face. He came off the boardwalk without hurry, and he did not look at Clara at all. He looked at his brother, and Harlan Walker seemed to shrink about 2 inches. "Ethan," Harlan said. "Don't." "Did you wire her?" Did you wire her, or did you let her ride 900 miles to be told in the street? It ain't your business." "It's my name on that ranch, too." Ethan Walker's voice never rose. That was the frightening thing about it. You got something to say to this woman, you say it in a room with a door on it like a man, not in front of Del Pritchard and half the county. "He's already said it," Clara said. Ethan turned then. He took off his hat, not twisting it, not fussing with it, just took it off and held it against his chest. "Ma'am?" "Don't," she said. "Ma'am, I'm not going to insult you by pretending I didn't hear that." "Then don't pity me either. I'd rather be laughed at than pitied. Laughter at least a person can walk out of." Something moved in his face. Not a smile. A recognition. "Yes, ma'am," he said. Clara picked up her suitcase. "Where are you going?" Harlan asked. "To find a room, and then away east. And then I intend to never say the name Walker again as long as I live." She got 11 steps before the town started talking. She heard it the way you hear rain start 1 drop, then 100. Mail order, 900 miles. Did you see her hem? Well, what did she expect? A woman that age. 30 if she's a day. Clara Whitmore had been humiliated before. She had been humiliated at 19 by a man in Baltimore with soft hands, and a promise he had no intention of keeping, and she had learned then that there is a particular kind of dignity that only exists in how you carry your shoulders. So she carried them. She went up the steps of the Silver Creek Hotel with her chin level and her hands steady, and she set her suitcase down on the counter. "A room, please." The clerk was a thin man with a part in his hair you could have laid a straight edge against. He looked at her. He looked past her out the window at the street where the whole thing had happened, and Clara watched him decide. $2, he said. "In advance." "Your sign says $1.25. Sign's old." "You changed it in the last 4 minutes." $2, ma'am." Clara opened her purse. She counted what was in it, and she counted it twice because she already knew the number, and she wanted the extra second to keep her face right. "I have $1.60, she said. "Then I reckon you have a problem." "I have a silver locket. It was my mother's. I'll leave it against the difference and redeem it Friday." "This ain't a pawn shop." "No," Clara said. "It's a hotel that raised its rates for one customer." The clerk's mouth thinned. "There's a boarding house down by the tannery takes women. I'd say it's more your speed now." "My speed?" "You know what I mean." "I'm afraid I don't. Say it plain. Everyone in this town has been saying things plain to me for a quarter of an hour. Don't lose your nerve now." Behind her the door opened. She knew who it was before he spoke, because the clerk's whole face changed, not to friendliness, but to the careful stillness of a man who has just remembered he has to live in a small place with other people. "Amos," Ethan Walker said. "Mr. Walker." "What's the room rate?" "It's—" The clerk swallowed. $1.25. "Then take $1.25 from the lady, and take the rest of the week off my account. And if I hear you quoted her $2 again, I'll take my winter beef order down to Callahan's in Ridgeway. You want to think on that before you answer." "Mr. Walker, I never meant—" "You meant it fine," Ethan said. "You just didn't expect anybody to say so." Clara turned around. "I did not ask you for that." "No, ma'am, you didn't." "I don't want it. That's your right. But I'd take it as a kindness if you'd let the man put you in a bed tonight and be angry at me in the morning when you've had supper. You think a supper fixes this. No, ma'am, I don't think anything fixes this." He held her eyes. "I've got no speech for you. My brother did a low thing, and I can't undo it, and I'd be a liar to stand here and tell you I understand it. But I do know a person can't think straight on an empty stomach after 11 days on a coach. And I know you're fixing to make some big decisions tonight, and I'd hate for you to make them hungry." Clara stood very still. Then she said, "One night. And I'll pay you back the $2. $1.25. "I'll pay you back the $2, she said, "because I intend to owe you nothing extra, and I don't trust arithmetic done by men who feel guilty." For the first time, something like a smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Yes, ma'am," he said. Son, she did not get supper. She got as far as the hotel steps at 5:30, having washed her face and repinned her hair, and decided that she would eat cheap and sleep hard and be on the Wednesday coach with what dignity remained to her. And that was when the horses came through. It started as a sound. Then it was a wagon team, 4 of them running wild with a broken tongue dragging behind, and no driver anywhere, coming down the length of the main street with the whole town scattering off the road in front of them like leaves. And in the middle of the street, a boy. He was maybe 6. He had been squatting by the water trough doing whatever boys of 6 do, and now he was standing up, and he had frozen the way a rabbit freezes, and there were men on both boardwalks shouting his name, and not one of them moving. Clara was already off the steps. She did not think about it. She thought about it later at length in the dark, and could not account for a single decision she made in those 4 seconds. She went off the steps and into the street, and she did not run at the boy. She ran at an angle out ahead of him, and she did the one thing she had learned from 4 years of driving a schoolmaster's gig on a road full of mill traffic. She got herself in front of the lead horse's eye, and she made herself enormous. She threw her arms wide. She screamed not a word, just a sound high and flat and awful. The led horse checked. Only for a stride. But a stride was enough of a swerve for her to catch the boy by the back of his shirt and swing him off his feet and into the gap between the trough and the post, and she went down with him hard, her shoulder taking the boardwalk edge, and the team went past close enough that the wind of it took her hat. Then it was over, and there was screaming, and the boy was crying into her collar, and Clara Whitmore lay in the dirt of a street she had been rejected in 90 minutes earlier, holding somebody else's child. A woman got to them first. She tore the boy out of Clara's arms and clutched him and said, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." And then she looked at Clara, and her face broke. "You're the woman from the coach," she said. "Yes, I said." The woman stopped. She was maybe 40, and her chin was shaking. "I said a thing on that porch, about you." "I know," Clara said. "I heard it." Is he hurt?" "He's no, he's not hurt." "Then that's the only thing worth saying right now," Clara said, and tried to get up, and found her shoulder would not do what she asked it, and sat back down. Ethan Walker came through the crowd like it wasn't there. He crouched. He did not touch her. "Ma'am, can you move your arm?" "I can move it. I'd rather not." "That's a fair answer." He put his hat back on. He looked briefly at the men on the boardwalk. 4 or 5 of them grown armed, none of whom had left their feet. And Clara watched his eyes go across them one at a time, and not one of them held it. "Well?" Ethan said to the street in general. "Reckon we know now." Nobody answered him. He turned back to Clara. "There's a doctor 2 doors down. He's a fair hand and a poor conversationalist, which is what you want in a doctor. I'll walk you if you'll allow it. I won't touch you." "Why do you keep saying that?" "Because you've had enough taken from you today without a man putting his hands on you uninvited." Clara looked at him for a long moment. "You may take my good elbow," she said. Harlan Walker was waiting outside the doctor's office when she came out with her arm strapped. He had been crying. It was plain on him. "Miss Whitmore." "No." "Please, 2 minutes. You had 11 days to send a wire. You get nothing." "I never wrote them letters," he said. Clara stopped. The street noise seemed to go a long way off. "Say that again." Harlan wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "I couldn't." He looked at the ground. "I ain't good with words, ma'am. Never have been. I can read a tally book, and that's about the end of it. I put my name to those letters. I sent 'em. I meant 'em, or I thought I did. But I never— Who wrote them? Miss Whitmore. 14 letters, Clara said, and her voice was not steady now, and she hated it. Somebody wrote me 14 letters. Somebody wrote me about a mare called June, who wouldn't take a bit from anybody but him. Somebody wrote me that in February the ice comes off the creek in one night, and it sounds like a house falling down. Somebody wrote me— She stopped. She made herself stop. Ask me a question about your own letters. Ma'am, ask me one. Anything. What color was the ribbon I sent you? Harlan said nothing. What did I tell you about my father? Nothing. What is the name of the mare, Mr. Walker? He shut his eyes. I don't know, he said. Clara took one step back from him, and then another, and something in her chest that had been holding since the coach came apart all at once. Not tears. Worse than tears. A kind of vertigo, because she understood standing on a plank walk in a town of 600 people that the man she had crossed a continent for had never existed. Then who, she said, have I been in love with since October? Harlan Walker didn't answer. He didn't have to, because she was already turning, and Ethan was standing 20 feet down the boardwalk with his hat in his hand, and he was not looking away. So, she did not speak to him that night. She went up to her room, and she sat on the edge of the bed with her boots still on for a long time, and somewhere below her in the dark, the town of Silver Creek went on telling the story of her to itself, and she let it. At some point, she took out the letters. She had them in a bundle tied with the same ribbon she'd asked Harlan about. She did not read them. She only held them and thought about a man's hand moving across a page in lamplight 900 miles away, and about how she had answered that hand at 11 o'clock at night for 7 months, and about how the hand had never once been the hand she'd come to marry. I have been a fool, she thought, and then because she was Clara Whitmore and had buried both her parents and closed up a house alone at 28 Num. I have been lied to. Those are different, and I will not confuse them. The man came for her at 8 in the morning, and he was not a walker. She knew that before he introduced himself, because he came into the hotel dining room like he had paid for the building, and the clerk went white and busy. Miss Whitmore? He was 50-odd silver at the temples, a good coat for a mountain town. Victor Hale. I own the ladder H north and east of here. I heard about the business yesterday, and I heard about the boy, and I want to say to your face what nobody in this town has had the manners to say. You were treated shamefully. Thank you. May I sit? You've already put your hand on the chair. He laughed. He sat. You're direct. I like that. It's rare in a woman and rarer in this county. He folded his hands. I'll be direct back. You're stranded, you're hurt, and you're broke. I don't say that to shame you. I say it because I don't have time to dance, and neither do you. I'd like to offer you a position. What position? Bookkeeper. I run near 400 head and 3 payrolls, and I'm using a tally system a blind man would be ashamed of. Harlan tells me you kept the books for a school and a church society back east. Harlan tells you a great deal. Harlan tells me everything, Hale said pleasantly. He owes me a great deal. Clara set down her cup. How much does he owe you? Now that's a question. It's the question I asked. Hale smiled. $1,140 against the Walker place. Note comes due the 15th of September. And before you ask, no, I didn't force it on him. He came to me in a bad winter with a sick herd, and I did what a neighbor does. But a note's a note. And if he can't pay it, then I take the east section, which, as it happens, is the only piece of that outfit worth anything, because the creek comes down through it. Hale spread his hands. I'm not a villain, Miss Whitmore. I'm a man with water on his mind in a dry summer, in a country where water is the whole argument. There's no other argument out here. There's just who has it and who doesn't. And you thought you'd tell me all this over coffee. I thought I'd tell you before somebody else told you a crooked version. He leaned back. $60 a month room in the main house and passage east in the spring if you want it. That's 4 times what any schoolhouse in this territory pays, and you'd be a fool to turn it down out of loyalty to a family that left you standing in the road. It was, Clara would think later, a genuinely good offer. It was also the first moment she was truly afraid, because she understood that he had not come to help her. He had come to buy the one person in the county who was about to have a reason to look closely at the Walker ledger. "May I ask you something, Mr. Hale?" "Anything." "Why does a man with 400 head and 3 payrolls ride into town at 8 in the morning to hire a stranger with one arm in a sling?" The pleasantness did not leave his face, but something behind it adjusted. "Because I move fast," he said. "It's how a man gets 400 head. Said Clara. "Give me a day." "I'd rather have an answer." "I'd rather have a day." He rose and put on his hat, and at the door he stopped. "Miss Whitmore, a word, and then I'll leave you be. Ethan Walker is a decent man and a poor rancher, and those 2 things are going to end the same way. Don't be standing on that place when it goes." Ethan came at noon. He waited in the street rather than come in, which she noticed. "Ma'am, how's the shoulder?" "Attached." "That's the main thing." He turned his hat once. "Victor Hale came to see you." "He did." "Offered you a job." "He did." "Take it," Ethan said. Clara blinked. "I'm sorry." "Take it. 60 a month if I know him in a bed, and he'll treat you square as long as you're useful to him, which will be a good while because you're the best bookkeeper that's set foot in this county in 10 years and he knows it." Ethan looked down the street. "I got nothing to match it. I got a house with a bad roof and $1,100 of somebody else's rope around my neck and a brother I want to horsewhip. That's my whole offer, and it ain't one." "Then why are you here?" "Because I wanted to say it myself instead of letting you hear I said it." Clara studied him. "You wrote the letters," she said. He went still. "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" "Harlan asked me to." "That is not why." "No, ma'am," he said. "It ain't." The street went past them both. "I'll tell you the whole of it," Ethan said finally, "but not standing here where Del Pritchard can hear it, because that man has done enough listening at my family's expense for one lifetime. Ride out with me. I'll bring you back before dark, and if you never want to see me again after, that's a thing you'll have earned honest." "You said you had no offer." "I don't. I got an explanation. They ain't the same, and I'd never insult you by pretending otherwise." Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her hat. "I'll want to see your books," she said. "Ma'am." "Your books, Mr. Walker. Your tally, your accounts, whatever it is you keep. If I am going to ride out to a ranch to hear a man explain why he wrote me love letters in his brother's name, I intend to get something useful out of the trip." Ethan Walker stared at her. Then he laughed. It came out of him rough and surprised, like a man who hadn't used the muscle in a while. "Yes, ma'am," he said. The ledger was worse than she expected, and Clara had expected it to be bad. She had it open on the kitchen table within 10 minutes of walking through the door, and she did not take her hat off, and she did not accept the coffee. "Who keeps this?" "I do." "Since when?" "Since our father passed, 6 years. And before that, he did." "He was worse," Clara said. "He was." She turned a page, turned another. "You've entered the same beef sale twice. March and April 18, head to Callahan, $94. Once here and once here." "That's—" Ethan came around the table. "No, that'd be 2 sales. Same buyer, same count, same price to the penny 5 weeks apart." He looked at it a long time. "No," he said slowly. "That ain't right. It's not right in 3 other places either. You've been paid once and recorded twice, which means every month you have believed you had more money than you had, which means every month you have made a decision on a number that was a lie." She turned another page. "And this. What is this, Mau? Water assessment. To whom? Ditch Company. Hale's got the majority share. Everybody on the creek pays it. You paid it 4 times last year." "It's quarterly." "It's annual," Clara said. "It says annual. On the receipt. In your own drawer. I found it while you were putting up the horses." She laid it flat and turned it toward him. "You have paid Victor Hale $312 you did not owe him, and he has taken it and he has said nothing." Ethan Walker did not move. When he spoke, his voice had changed. It had gone very quiet and very level, and Clara understood for the first time that the calm in this man was not softness, it was the lid on something. "Say that again." $312. Over how long? 2 years from what's here. There may be more. I'd need the earlier books. They're in the barn. Then get them. He didn't move yet. "Miss Whitmore, if you're wrong about this—" "I am not wrong about this," Clara said. "I am wrong about a great many things. I was wrong about a man on a train platform in Baltimore when I was 19, and I was wrong about your brother yesterday afternoon in front of 40 people. I am not wrong about a column of figures. Figures are the one thing in my life that have never once lied to me, Mr. Walker, and I'll thank you to go get the barn books." Ethan Walker got the barn books. They worked until the lamp needed trimming twice. At some point, she took her hat off. At some point, he put a plate of something in front of her, and she ate it without noticing. He read the numbers out, and she wrote them down and asked questions, and the questions were not the questions a man asks. Not how many head, but how many head did you believe you had, and who told you? And at some point, with her pen still moving, she said, "Now tell me about the letters." He was quiet for a while. "Harlan got it in his head last summer to send off to one of them matrimonial papers," he said. "He'd been low. Our mother passed in 73, and he took it hard, and he got the notion that a wife'd fix it. He wrote off. He got 3 answers. 2 of them wanted to know how much land." A pause. "Yours wanted to know what the winters were like." Clara's pen stopped. "He couldn't answer it," Ethan said. "Sat at this table 4 nights with a sheet of paper. Finally he says, 'Ethan, you talk to her, I'll sign it.' And I said no. And he asked again. And I said no. And then he set your letter down in front of me and went to bed. And you read it." "I read it. And I answered it," Ethan said. "And I have been ashamed of myself every single day since. And I do it again, and both those things are true, and I can't help you reconcile them." Clara set the pen down. "Why?" "Because you asked what the winters were like." He turned his cup a quarter turn. "Nobody's ever asked me that, ma'am. Folks ask what a place is worth. They ask how many acres. You asked what it was like, and I sat down to write 2 lines, and I wrote 4 pages. And when I came to the end of it, I signed my brother's name to it, and that's the lowest thing I have done in 44 years of living." "You wrote 14. "I did. And every one of them you knew." "Every one. And when I got off that coach yesterday," Clara said, "you were going to let me marry him." "Yes, ma'am." "Look at me and say it." He looked at her. "Yes, ma'am. I was." "Why?" "Because he asked her first," Ethan said, "and because I'm the older brother, and because I've been the one holding this outfit together since I was 19 years old, and I've never once taken a thing for myself, and I did not intend to start with a woman who thought she was promised to somebody else." His voice didn't rise. It never rose. "And then he stood up in that street and did what he did. And I want you to know, ma'am, I want you to know this, if you never believe another word out of my mouth, I did not know he was going to do it. If I had known, I would have put him on a horse and sent him to the county line before that coach ever came in sight." Clara sat back. The lamp guttered. Neither of them moved to fix it. "Mr. Walker," she said at last, "do you understand what you've done to me?" "I do." "No, I don't believe you do." Her voice cracked on it once, and she let it. "For 7 months I read those letters at the end of every day. I read them when the school board cut my wages. I read them when I sold my mother's sewing machine. There is a sentence in the 11th one." She stopped. She breathed. "There's a sentence in the 11th one that got me through my father's funeral. And now I find that the man who wrote it stood on a boardwalk yesterday and watched me get cut in half in the street and didn't speak till the thing was already done. "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said. "That's about the size of it." "You have nothing to say to that." "No, ma'am, I don't. It's true, and a man who argues with a true thing is just wasting a woman's evening." And Clara Whitmore, who had not cried in front of another human being since she was 22 years old, put her hand over her mouth and cried at a stranger's kitchen table. He didn't touch her. He didn't say a word. He got up and went out onto the porch and left her the room and stood out there in the dark for 11 minutes and came back in only when she called him. The rider came at 9 the next morning. Clara was at the table with the barn books when she heard the horse and Ethan went out, and she heard voices, and then she heard nothing at all, which was worse. When he came back in, he had a folded paper in his hand and his face had gone to stone. "What is it?" "Land office." "Read it to me." "Clara." It was the first time he had used her name. Neither of them remarked on it. "Read it to me," she said. He read it. It took him a while because it was written in the way such things are written, but the substance of it came clear by the second paragraph and clearer by the fourth. The east section, the section with the creek, the section that was the only reason the Walker place was worth $1, had never been patented. It had been filed on by their father in 1868 under a homestead entry and proved up, and the proving had been accepted, and the patent had been issued to the head of household and family, and a claim had now been entered against it. Contesting. Filed by an agent of the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company, which was Victor Hale, on the grounds that the entry had failed its conditions, that there had been no family on that land in 6 years. No household, only 2 bachelor brothers running cattle, and that under the terms of the entry, the section was subject to forfeit and reversion. Hearing before the Territorial Land Commissioner, the 4th of September. 6 weeks. "That's why," Clara said. Ethan looked up. "That's why he came to see me at 8 in the morning," she said, and she was already standing. "That's why he offered me $60 a month. He filed this 3 days ago. He knew it was coming. He wanted me on his payroll and out of your books before this paper landed on your table, because I am the only person in this county who can go through 2 years of his water assessments and prove he's been robbing you blind. He can't take the section over a technicality." "He can take it over exactly a technicality," Clara said. "Technicalities are what land offices are, Mr. Walker. Men like Victor Hale do not steal with guns out here. They steal with dates and filings and forms because a form doesn't hang." Ethan set the paper down. "Then he's got us," he said. "Because he ain't wrong. There's no family on this place. There's me, and there's Harlan, and there ain't been a woman under this roof since my mother died." The kitchen went quiet. Clara Whitmore stood very still by the table with her hand flat on a ledger full of another man's ruin, and understood all at once and completely exactly what she was standing in the middle of. She thought about a hotel clerk raising a rate by 75 cents. She thought about 4 grown men on a boardwalk who did not step off it for a child. She thought about a woman on a porch saying a woman that age. She thought about $60 a month and a bed in Victor Hale's house. And she thought about 14 letters and a sentence in the 11th one and a hand moving across a page by lamplight. "Mr. Walker," she said. "Ma'am." "Ask me." Ethan Walker's head came up. "Ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am. Not for this. Miss Whitmore, if you think I'd, after what's been done to you in this town, if you think I'd stand here and use a piece of paper to—" "I know exactly what you'd do," Clara said. "That's the trouble with your letters, sir. I have been reading you for 7 months. I know what you'd do, and I know what you'd never do, and I know that you will stand in this kitchen and lose 1,100 acres, and your creek and your name, before you would ask me for one single thing, because you have never once asked anybody for anything in your entire life, and it is going to be the death of you." "It ain't right," he said. "No," she said. "It isn't. Nothing about this is right. It was not right when I got off that coach, and it was not right when you signed your brother's name, and it will not be right on the 4th of September. But I have been standing in the wreck of other people's decisions for 3 days, and I am done being the thing that gets decided about." She came around the table. "So ask me," she said. "Not for the land, not to save your outfit. Look at me and ask me the way you'd have asked in a letter." And Ethan Walker, who had not asked for a thing since he was 19 years old, who had held a mountain together with his 2 hands and his silence and his stubborn, ruinous pride, took his hat off in his own kitchen and stood there holding it like a man in church. "Clara Whitmore," he said, "I've got a bad roof and a worse brother and 6 weeks to keep the only water on this mountain. And I have loved the woman who wrote me about her father's watch since the second letter, and I have never in my life been more ashamed of anything or wanted anything more. Will you marry me?" Clara did not answer right away. She reached into her pocket and took out the bundle of letters tied with the ribbon he had never seen, and had thanked her for anyway, and she set them on the table between them. "Say the name of the mare," she said. "June." "Say what happens in February." "The ice comes off the creek in one night," Ethan said, "and it sounds like a house falling down." "Yes," said Clara Whitmore, "I will." They were married 11 days later, on a Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning, in the front room of Reverend Pike's house, with 2 witnesses and no flowers. Clara had wanted it that way. Ethan had offered a church. "No," she'd said. "Clara, every soul in that church watched me get cut off at the knees in the street. They'll not watch me get married. They'll talk either way." "Then let them talk about a thing they didn't see," Clara said. "It's the only power I've got left in this town, and I intend to use it." So it was Pike's front room, and the Reverend's wife holding the book, and Doc Bell standing up as the second witness, because he was the only man in Silver Creek Ethan trusted to keep his mouth shut about anything. Pike got as far as lawful wedded before he stopped. "Ethan, I'll ask you the once, and then I'll say no more about it." "Ask. Is this on account of that land paper?" The room went very still. Clara answered before Ethan could. "It is." Pike blinked. "It is partly on account of that land paper," she said, "and it is partly on account of 14 letters, and it is entirely on account of the fact that I am 30 years old, and I have decided. Now, Reverend, are you going to marry us, or are you going to interview us?" Doc Bell made a sound into his fist. "Pike married them. Ethan didn't kiss her. He looked at her when it was done, and he looked at her a second too long, and then he put out his hand like a man closing a deal at a stock pen, and Clara took it, and they shook hands in front of a preacher. Later she would think that was the moment she started to love him. Not the letters, the handshake. Because he had not assumed one single thing. Harlan was waiting outside. He had his hat off already. He'd had it off, Doc Bell said afterward, for near 40 minutes, standing in the road like a man waiting on a jury. "Ethan?" "Not today." "I just want to say." "I said not today." "She's my—" Harlan stopped himself, and the word he didn't say sat there in the dirt between all 3 of them. "It's my name too. It's my fault. All of it's my fault, and I'd like to—" "You'd like to feel better," Ethan said. That's exactly what it is. You want to hand me your guilt, so I'll carry it same as I've carried the rest of it since you were 9 years old." Ethan put his hat on. "I ain't got the room, Harlan. Not this week." He walked to the wagon. Clara didn't follow him right away. "Mr. Walker," she said. Harlan's head came up like she'd struck him. "Ma'am, I want to ask you something, and I want you to understand that I will know if you lie, because I have spent 3 days in your family's books, and I have gotten very good at spotting the places where a number is standing in for a story." "Yes, ma'am." "Victor Hale. How much do you owe him?" Harlan's face did something complicated. "Ranch owes him $11.40. "That's not what I asked." "Ma'am?" "How much do you owe him, Harlan? You personally, not the outfit. You." The color went out of him from the top down, which was, Clara had noticed, the exact opposite of the way it came in. "I gotta go," he said. "Harlan?" "I gotta go, ma'am. Congratulations. I mean it. I mean it more than anything I ever said." And he went fast up the street toward the livery, and Clara stood in front of the preacher's house on her wedding day and watched her husband's brother run. She got into the wagon. "What did he say?" Ethan asked. "Nothing." "Clara." "He said nothing," she said, "and it took him a long time to say it, and I want you to drive." Victor Hale knew by supper. He didn't come himself. That was the part that told Clara the most about him. He sent a note on paper with a printed letterhead which no one else in that county had brought out by a rider who waited at the door with his hat on until Ethan told him twice to take it off. Ethan read it standing up. Well, he congratulates us. And he says he trusts we'll understand that a marriage entered into after the filing date has no bearing on the condition of the entry, and that he'd hate to see us go to expense over a misapprehension. Ethan set it down. He spelled misapprehension right. He would. He's saying it don't work. He's saying he's afraid it might, Clara said. A man who's certain doesn't write letters, Ethan. A man who's certain lets the calendar do it for him. That was the first time she'd used his given name, and they both heard it, and neither one of them touched it. She started the next morning at 5. Not with the ledger, with the drawer. Ethan came in at 6:30 to find every receipt, chit brand inspection, freight bill tally slip, and folded scrap of paper the Walker place had generated in 9 years laid out across the kitchen table and half the floor in rows that meant nothing to him and everything to her. "Don't step there," she said without looking up. "Clara, what in the— Don't step there." He stopped with his foot in the air. "That's my floor." "It is currently 1872, Clara said. "Please go around by the stove." He went around by the stove. By noon, she had 4 things she was certain of, and 1 she was afraid of. She laid the 4 out for him first, because she had already learned that Ethan Walker took bad news better when it came in order. 1. You have paid the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company an annual assessment 4 times a year for 2 years and part of a third. That is $390 overpaid, and I found 2 more receipts in the barn book, so it's worse than I told you. All right. 2. Every single one of those receipts is signed by the same hand, not Hale's, the company clerk's. Same hand, same ink, same little curl on the Y. So the ditch company's articles say assessments are set by vote of the shareholders at an annual meeting. Where's the notice? You're a shareholder, aren't you? Ethan sat down slowly. 4 shares. Come down from my father. Then when did you last get notice of a meeting? He was quiet. Ethan. Never, he said. Not once. Never in 6 years. Never in 6 years. Clara wrote that down and underlined it twice. 3. Your beef sales are entered wrong in 11 places, not 4, and every single error runs the same direction. Everyone makes it look like you took in more than you did. She looked up. Do you know what that means? Means I can't add. It means somebody wanted you to believe you were doing better than you were, so that when the bad winter came and you were short, you would be surprised, and a surprised man borrows fast and doesn't read. She put the pen down. You didn't make those entries alone, did you? Harlan read the numbers out. I wrote 'em down. Every time. Most times. He's got the better eye for a tally sheet. Ethan stopped. Clara didn't say anything. She had learned that too. No, Ethan said. No, ma'am, not Harlan. I didn't say Harlan. You didn't have to. 4, Clara said, and moved on because he was not ready and she was not cruel. Your father's homestead entry. You said the patent came in 68. Thereabouts. Where is it? Where's what? The patent, Ethan, the paper, the actual patent from the General Land Office with the seal on it. He was already shaking his head. It ain't in the house. My mother kept papers in a tin, and the tin's got the deed on the home place and the bill of sale on the bull, and— He stopped again. It ain't in the tin. No, said Clara. It isn't. I've had that tin open 3 times. Then it's lost. Or it was never issued, Clara said, and your father died believing it had been, and that is the thing I am afraid of, and that is why I am going to Ridgeway on Thursday. They went to Ridgeway on Thursday, both of them 41 miles and a night at a boarding house that made Clara laugh out loud when the woman asked whether they'd want the 1 room or the 2. 1, Clara said. Ethan didn't look at her. Mr. Walker, she said on the stairs, you may sleep in the chair. and I will thank you not to make a speech about it. Wasn't going to make a speech? You were composing one. I was composing one, Ethan admitted. The land office clerk in Ridgway was named Fenn, and he was 60, and he had the face of a man who had spent 40 years telling people things they didn't want to hear, and had gotten to where he almost enjoyed it. Walker. He came back with a book the size of a church Bible. Section 14. Here's your entry. Filed February of '63 by Amos T. Walker. Final proof accepted November of '68. Then the patent issued, Ethan said. Didn't say that. You said proof accepted. Accepted's a step, Fenn said. Issued's a different step. And issued's got a number, and there ain't a number in this column. He turned the book around. See that blank? Been blank 18 years. Ethan looked at the blank. That's my whole life, he said. That's a clerical hole is what that is, said Fenn. I've seen 400 of them, war years and after. Papers went to Washington and never came back. Half this territory's sitting on land it don't hold paper to and don't know it. Then it's fixable, Clara said. Sure it's fixable. Man petitions proof gets reviewed patent issues. Takes 11 months, maybe 14. We have 6 weeks. Then it ain't fixable, said Fenn. Clara put both hands flat on the counter. Mr. Fenn, the contest against this entry was filed by an agent of the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company on the 14th of July. May I see the filing? It's public. Then it will not embarrass either of us for me to see it. He got it. He was slow about it, and he sniffed twice, but he got it, and he laid it out, and stood back with his arms folded like a man who wanted to watch. Clara read it. She read it twice. Then she said in a voice Ethan had not heard out of her before, Ethan. What? Don't say anything until we're outside. Clara. Not one word, and don't change your face. He waited until the door was shut behind them, and they were 20 steps down the walk. Now, there's an affidavit attached. I figured there would be. A sworn affidavit, Clara said, from a resident of the county stating that he has personal knowledge of Section 14 and that no family has resided upon it since the death of Margaret Walker in 1873, and that the land is occupied solely by 2 unmarried men running cattle for profit. Ethan stopped walking. Say the name, he said. Ethan. Say the name Clara. Harlan Walker, she said. Sworn the 11th of July, 3 days before the filing. Witnessed by Amos Dury Hotel Clerk, Silver Creek. Ethan Walker stood in the middle of a street in Ridgway, Colorado, on a hot Thursday in July, and did not say anything for a long time. He'd have had to sign it in front of a notary, he said finally. He did. Then he read it. He read it. He read it, Ethan said, and he signed it, and then 3 days later he stood in the street and turned you out in front of the whole county. Yes. Because if he'd married you... Ethan's jaw locked. If he'd married you, there'd have been a family on that land inside a week, and the whole thing'd have been dead in the water. Yes, Clara said quietly. That's what I've been sitting on since I read it, and I did not want to say it to you in front of a clerk who'd have it in Silver Creek by Sunday. He was paid. Or he was owed. He was paid Clara. Then let's go find out how much, she said. And let's do it without you killing him on the way, because I have a great deal of use for that boy, and none at all for a corpse. They found him in the barn at 9 that night. He knew. Clara saw it the second the lantern found his face. He'd known for 3 days that they'd gone to Ridgway, and he'd been living in it, and he had the gray look of a man who has not been sleeping, and has stopped pretending he might. Ethan didn't shout. Clara had braced for shouting. What came instead was worse. How much? Harlan set down the bridle he was holding. Ethan, how much did he pay you to swear my mother out of her own house? He didn't pay me nothing. Don't. He didn't pay me nothing. It came out of Harlan cracked and high. He forgave a note. There's a difference, and I know there ain't, but there is, and I got to say it once. What note? Harlan's mouth worked. Harlan, what note? $620, Harlan said. The lantern hissed. Cards, Ethan said. Some cards. And there was a horse deal in Ridgeway that went bad. And there was a woman in Ridgeway I was giving money to, and I ain't proud of a minute of it, and every time I went to tell you I'd look at you working, and I couldn't. His voice broke apart entirely. You never take nothing. You never asked me for nothing. You just work, and every year you look older, and I'm the one that costs. I have always been the one that costs. So you cost me the creek? He said it was a formality. He said the entry was bad anyhow, and the government'd catch it sooner or later, and all he was doing was getting in line first. And that if I swore to what was true, and Ethan it was true, there ain't been a family on that place since Ma died. That's the hell of it. Every word on that paper is true. And the bride, Ethan said. Harlan stopped. Say it, Ethan said. You've come this far in one night, say the rest of it. You wrote off to a matrimonial paper because you were low. And then in July, a man in a good coat explained to you what a wife would do to his filing. And then you stood in the street on the 14th of July, and you cut a woman's life in half in front of 40 people to keep a piece of paper alive. Ethan, look at her when you answer. Harlan looked at Clara. Clara did not help him. She stood there with the lantern light on her face and made him do it. I was going to marry you, Harlan said. Right up till that morning. He come to the ranch that morning, ma'am, 6 o'clock. He didn't threaten me. He never once threatened me. He just sat his horse and he said, Harlan, if you take that woman to the preacher today, I'll have to call in the 620, and I'd sure hate for your brother to find out that way. His face was wet. And I stood in that street and I looked at you getting off that coach, and I thought if I do it quick, it'll only hurt her the once. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Clara said, Harlan. Ma'am? Look at me. He did. You are going to sign a retraction, she said. Ethan turned. Clara, you are going to sign a sworn statement that the affidavit of the 11th of July was procured by an inducement, which it was, and you are going to name the inducement, which is a note of $620 forgiven, and you are going to name the man, and you are going to swear to what he said to you on horseback at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of July, word for word, in front of a notary who is not Amos Dury. Harlan stared at her. Ma'am, that'll put my name in a territorial hearing. That'll say out loud in a public room what I done. Yes. There ain't a family in this county'd speak to me after. Probably not, Clara said. I'd have to say the part about the woman in Ridgeway. You would. I'd have to say it in front of Ethan. Harlan, Clara said, you have already done the thing you're afraid of. All that's left is whether anybody ever finds out you were sorry. Harlan Walker cried in the barn for a good long while, and when he was done he said, all right. And then he said, I'll want to say something to you first, ma'am, and I ain't going to say it good. Say it badly then. I read them letters before he sent 'em. Clara went cold. He'd write 'em out and set 'em on the table, and I'd sign my name, and I'd read 'em first every one, and I remember thinking she's going to love him. Harlan wiped his face with his sleeve. And I let her come anyway. That's the part I can't get past. Not the paper. That. She rode back to the house alone that night and let the two of them have the barn. Whatever was said in there, Ethan never told her, and she never asked. But he came in at 2 in the morning with his knuckles split, and she got the basin without a word, and he sat at the kitchen table and let her do it. You hit him. He asked me to. That's not an answer. It's the answer I got, Ethan said. He asked me to, and I did it once, and then I sat down in the straw with him till midnight. And Clara, he's 29 years old. I keep thinking he's a boy. He ain't been a boy in a long time, and I never once noticed when he stopped. Clara wrung out the cloth. Ethan. Yes, ma'am. The retraction helps. It does not save us. He looked up. Harlan's statement makes Hale look ugly, she said. It does not make the land office issue a patent. Fenn was not lying to us. The entry has a hole in it, and Victor Hale did not invent the hole. He found it. That's what makes him dangerous. He has never once had to lie about the main thing. Then what saves us? 2 things and neither of them are in this house." She hung the cloth on the rail. "The first is the ditch company. If I can show that Hale has been collecting assessments 4 times a year with no shareholder meeting and no notice for 6 years from you and from every other man on that creek, then he is not a neighbor with a filing. He is a man with a pattern, and a commissioner who would never take our word about the land will believe a man is a thief if you show him a column. And the second is worse," Clara said, "and I want you to hear it before you say no." "Say it." "A land commissioner does not decide what's true. He decides what a place testifies to. If the Silver Creek that comes into that hearing room says no family 2 bachelors cattle for profit, then that's what Section 14 is, and it doesn't matter what's in your heart or my ledger. But if that town stands up and says the Walker place is a home and we have eaten in it—" Ethan laughed. It wasn't a good laugh. "Clara, that town watched you get turned out in the road and not one of them opened their mouth. I know it. That town raised your hotel rate. I know it. You want me to go hat in hand to Del Pritchard." "No," said Clara. "I want me to." He stared at her. "You," he said. "I am the only person in this county nobody can accuse of self-interest, because everyone in it has already decided I have nothing. And there is one more thing, Ethan, and it is the ugliest thing I have said yet." She sat down across from him. "Every soul on that street on the 14th of July is carrying something. I saw their faces when I picked up that suitcase. They liked it. And then 2 hours later they watched a stranger with a bad shoulder go under a wagon team for a child they had all stood still for. Ruth Tilley." "Ruth Tilley," Clara agreed. "And Ruth Tilley has not been able to look at me since. And I have let her not look at me. And I'm about to stop being kind about it." Ruth Tilley came to the door on a Sunday with a covered dish and a boy holding onto her skirt, and she got out 3 words before Clara took the dish out of her hands and set it down and said, "Come in, not on the porch, in." The boy's name was Sam. He was 6. He had a scab on his elbow the size of a $50, and he would not let go of his mother. "I've been meaning," Ruth started. "For 3 weeks." "Yes." "Sit down, Mrs. Tilley." Ruth sat. "I'm going to ask you for something," Clara said, "and you are going to want to say yes to me because of what happened by the trough, and I want you to understand before you open your mouth that if you say yes for that reason, I will not take it. I don't want to be paid for that boy. He'd have done the same for mine." Ruth's chin went. "Now, on the 4th of September, there is a hearing in Ridgeway that will decide whether this family keeps the only water on this mountain. Victor Hale intends to prove there is no home on this place. I intend to prove there is, and I cannot do it with a ledger. You want me to speak? I want you to tell a commissioner from the territory that you have sat at this table." Ruth looked at the table. "I have never sat at this table," she said. "In 11 years. "Then that's the trouble, isn't it?" said Clara. "Sit at it now." Ruth Tilley started crying, and Sam started crying because his mother was, and Clara got up and got the boy a biscuit with honey on it, and told him he could take it outside and get it all over himself, and nobody in this house would say a word about it. And when the door banged shut behind him, she came back and sat down. "My husband works for Hale," Ruth said. $18 a month in a house." "I know. If I stand up in a public room, you'll lose the $18 and the house. Then how can you ask me?" "Because I am not going to lie to you about what it costs," Clara said. "Every other person who asks you for something in this life is going to tell you it'll be fine. I am telling you it very likely will not be fine, and I am asking anyway, and that is the only honest way one woman can ask another for a hard thing." Ruth Tilley wiped her face with the heel of her hand. "There's others," she said. Clara went very still. "Say that again." "There's others he's done it to, the assessments. My husband hauls for the ditch company 2 weeks a year he sees the book. Alma Pruitt's paid 4 times a year since her man died, and she can't hardly read a bill. Old Silas Renfro paid 5 times 1 year 5 ma'am, and when he went to complain, Hale bought his hay at 40 cents over the market, and Renfro went home happy and never said another word. Renfro, Clara repeated. They won't talk to you. They'll talk to Alma Pruitt. Alma Pruitt's 81. Alma Pruitt, said Clara, has been overcharged by a man who assumed she couldn't read a bill, and in my experience there is nothing on this earth angrier than a woman who has been assumed at. She was right. Alma Pruitt received her on a Tuesday, listened for 19 minutes without saying one word, and then said, "Bring me the receipts." "They're your receipts, Mrs. Pruitt." "Then bring me a pencil, girl, and sit down and don't you dare talk while I'm counting." She counted for 2 hours. Then she set the pencil down. $460. Alma Pruitt said, "Since my husband went in the ground, that man carried the coffin. He carried the front left corner of my husband's coffin, and then he rode home and wrote out a bill." "Yes, ma'am." "Will you write it out proper? I can add, but my hand shakes." "I will write it out proper, and I'll want it read to me before I put my name on anything, and I'll want it read slow, and if there's a word in there I don't know, I'll want it changed to one I do." "Yes, ma'am." "All right," said Alma Pruitt. "Now, which of them's your husband, the quiet one or the pretty one?" "The quiet one." "Good," said Alma Pruitt. "The pretty one 'd have been a mistake." It took her 19 days to get 11 of them. 11 households on Silver Creek, with receipts and dates, and a total in Clara's hand of $2,940 in assessments, collected on an annual charge levied quarterly, with no notice of meeting, no vote, and no accounting for 6 years. 4 more refused outright. 2 took her receipts, kept them, and would not answer the door. And on the 22nd of August, at 10 in the morning, Victor Hale came up the road to the Walker place himself. Ethan met him in the yard. Clara came out and stood on the step and did not come down. "Mrs. Walker." Hale touched his hat. "I'll say it plain, that's a good name on you. I've never heard it sound better than when I heard about you at Alma Pruitt's." "Then you've heard. I've heard you're a very thorough woman, and I've heard you're a very brave one, and I want you to know I don't say either of those things sarcastic." He didn't dismount. "Ethan, I've come to make an offer, and I've come to make it in front of your wife because I've learned this month it's her that decides." "Say it." "I withdraw the contest, entirely. I'll wire Ridgway this afternoon, and it's dead before supper. I forgive the $1140 on the note, the whole of it, not the interest, the principal. And I pay $2,000 cash for the East Section, which is more than it's worth, and both of us know it." "No," Ethan said. "You didn't hear the last of it." "I heard enough. The last of it," Hale said, "is that Harlan's statement goes in the stove and never gets read in a public room, and that boy gets to live in this county for the next 50 years, which he will not otherwise do, and you know he will not. And I think, Ethan, that if you are honest with yourself, you have already thought about that." Ethan didn't answer. $2,000 and the note and your brother's name," Hale said, "for a strip of grass and a creek. And I'll tell you the truth, since we're all being truthful this morning, I want the water, and I'll have it one way or the other, because water is the only argument there's ever been out here. The only question left is whether you take money for it or whether you take a hearing." "Mr. Hale," Clara said. "Ma'am." "Why did you tell Harlan Walker to reject me in the street?" Hale's expression did not change at all, which told her everything. "I never told him any such thing." "You told him you'd have to call in a note, on horseback, at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of July. I don't recall the conversation. You recall the hour." There was a pause about half a second long, and Clara saw it, and Hale saw that she saw it. "You're quick," he said. "I'm rested," said Clara. "It's a different thing, and I've only just gotten it back." She came down one step. "You could have contested that entry any time in 6 years. The hole's been in the book since 1868. You waited until a woman got on a coach in Missouri. Why, business." "You waited," Clara said, "because a bad entry with 2 bachelors on it is a filing, and a bad entry with a family on it is a fight, and you did not want a fight. And so you arranged for me to be humiliated in a public street to keep your paperwork clean. You did not do it because you're cruel. You did it because it was tidy." "Mrs. Walker, I want you to know that I know that," Clara said. I want you to carry it up that road with you. You did not think about me for 1 minute, not one. I was a condition on a filing." Hale sat his horse a moment. 60 seconds, he said, "and I'd have hired you at any price, and this county'd be a different place. That's a real regret, and I'll only say it once." He gathered his reins. "Ethan, the offer stands till the 1st of September. After that, we're in a room with a commissioner, and I'll do what I have to do. And I want you to understand something because I've been square with you, and I'll stay square. If we go to that hearing, I will put your brother on the stand, and I will take him apart in front of every soul in this county, and it will not be pleasant, and it will be entirely legal, and I will sleep fine." "I know you will," Ethan said. "Then think on it." "I have." "You've had 4 minutes." "I've had 6 years," Ethan said. "And I'll tell you what, I ain't never told a soul Hale since you rode up here, to be honest. I have known that Creek was the only thing keeping this place alive since I was 19 years old. And every year of my life, I have gotten up in the dark and worked till I couldn't see and gone to bed alone. And every year, the whole of it got a little further from me, and I never once could say why." He put his hand on the porch rail. "And then a woman got off a coach and opened a drawer, and inside of 3 weeks, I found out I've been robbed every quarter for 6 years by a man who carried a coffin. So no, I don't want your $2,000. I want a room with a commissioner in it, and I want it public, and I want every man on this creek sitting in the back of it." Victor Hale looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Clara. "Ma'am," he said, "I'd like you to know that I'm sorry about the 14th of July. "I believe you are," Clara said. "I've decided that doesn't matter." He rode out. They stood there until the sound of him was gone off the road. $2,000, Ethan said. "Yes." "And the note?" "Yes." "And Harlan?" "Yes," Clara said. "You didn't say a word while I turned it down." "No." "Why not?" "Because you have spent your entire life doing what was necessary for other people," Clara said. "And I have been married to you for 6 weeks, and I have never once seen you want a thing out loud." I was not going to interrupt. Ethan Walker turned to look at her, and he might have said something. Then she thought afterward that he had been about to, that whatever it was had been coming up out of him the way the truth had come up out of Harlan in the barn. But he never got the chance, because that was when they heard the wagon coming hard up the road, and it was Harlan standing up in the box, whipping a horse that was already spent. He came into the yard shouting before he'd even hauled up. "Ethan, the head gate. He's shut the head gate." "He's what?" "Up at the ditch he's closed the main gate, and he's got 4 men on it with the company's paper, and the creek below the flume's already down a foot and dropping." Harlan got down, and his legs nearly went. "Ethan, there's 200 heads standing in the east section, and there ain't going to be water in that draw by Thursday." Clara heard Ethan take one breath. "He offered us $2,000 10 minutes ago," she said. "He did," said Ethan. "And he was riding up here knowing the gate was already shut." "He was." "Then he never meant us to take it," Clara said. "He meant us to remember we'd been offered it." Ethan Walker went for the barn and got his hat off the peg, and was on a horse in under 2 minutes, and Clara Whitmore Walker stood in the yard with a dry creek 11 days out from a hearing, and understood that the tidy man had stopped being tidy. He got to the head gate in 40 minutes, and there were 4 men on it. Tom Creed was sitting on the gate frame with a rifle across his knees and a folded paper in his shirt pocket, and he stood up when he saw who it was, and he had the decency to look sick about it. "Ethan, open it." "Can't." "Tom, you've bought hay off me 9 years." "I know it." "Open the gate." "I got a paper," Creed said, and he took it out and his hand wasn't steady. "Company order. Assessments in arrears on the Walker shares. Company's entitled to shut off delivery to a shareholder in arrears till it's made current. It's in the articles. He read 'em to me twice this morning like he was reading scripture." "In arrears," Ethan said. "That's what it says. I have paid that company 4 times a year for 6 years." "Ethan, 4 times a year on an annual charge. Tom and I've got the receipts on my kitchen table, and my wife has counted them, and I am in arrears." Creed looked at the water backing up behind the gate. "He said you'd say that," he said. "What else did he say I'd say? He said you'd say a lot of things and that I was to stand here and not answer none of them." Creed set his jaw. "I got a wife too, Ethan. I got 3 girls in a house that ain't mine. Don't make me be the man in this. You already are." "That ain't fair." "No," Ethan said, "it ain't." He looked at the 3 others. He knew all of them. He had pulled 2 of them out of a snowbank in '71, and he did not say so because a man who has to remind people what he's done for them has already lost. "Wallace," he said. Wallace Tilley did not look up from the ground. "Wallace Tilley, your boy Sam is alive because my wife went under a wagon team for him." "Mr. Walker, I ain't asking you to open it. I'm asking you to look at me." Wallace Tilley looked at him for about a second and a half, and then he looked at his boots, and Ethan Walker turned his horse and rode home without another word, because he had learned young that a man who begs twice gets nothing but the memory of it. Clara was on the porch with 3 books open when he came into the yard. "Well, 4 men and a paper says I'm in arrears." "Arrears," Clara repeated. "That's what I said. Get down and come inside. Don't put the horse up yet, you'll want him." She had the ditch company's articles of incorporation, a copy Fenn had let her pay $2 to have made in Ridgeway over Ethan's protest that $2 was $2, and she had it flattened under her forearm with a knife handle holding the page. "Article 9, she said. "Delivery may be suspended to a shareholder in arrears." He's right, it's there. "Then that's that." "Article 4, Clara said. "Assessments shall be fixed by vote of the shareholders in annual meeting notice of said meeting to be given to each shareholder not less than 20 days prior in writing." She looked up. "Ethan, how can you be in arrears on an assessment that was never lawfully levied?" He stood there. "Say it slower. He is suspending your water for failure to pay a charge that his own articles say does not exist unless he holds a meeting he has never held." She tapped the page. "That is not a strong argument. It is a stupid argument, and I do not understand why he made it, and that frightens me more than the gate does." "Frightens you? Victor Hale has not made one careless move in 6 weeks. He filed on a hole in a land book that has been sitting open for 18 years, and he waited until the exact month it would do the most damage. That man does not hand me a broken argument by accident." She closed the book. "He wants us up at that gate. He wants us angry, and he wants us up there, and I would very much like to know why before we go." "Clara, there's 200 head in the East Draw." "I know. They've got water in the draw till Thursday, maybe Wednesday if it stays hot." "I know. And there's a hearing on the 4th. And if I move that herd off the east section to save 'em, then on the 4th of September Victor Hale stands up in a room in Ridgeway and says there ain't been stock on that ground in a week." Ethan put both hands on the table. "That's it. That's the whole trap. He don't need the gate to beat me. He needs me to move my own cattle off my own land so he can say I abandoned it." Clara went very still. "Say that again." "He wants me to move the herd. That's the second thing," she said slowly. "That's the second thing, and it's not the first thing, and I have been sitting here for an hour and I couldn't see the first thing." She was already standing. "Ethan, where is the head gate?" "You know where it is." "Where is it? On what ground?" "It's a 1/4 mile above the flume up in the—" He stopped. "Say it." "It's on Section 14, Ethan said. "It is on Section 14, Clara said. "The Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company has a head gate, a flume 600 feet of ditch, and a stone abutment sitting on the exact piece of ground it filed a contest against on the 14th of July. She was pulling her hat off the peg. "Ethan put a saddle on something and go to Ridgeway and ask Mr. Fenn one question and one only. Ask him whether the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company has ever filed a right-of-way across Section 14. Ask him for the number. If there's no number, then he's trespassing. Then he is worse than trespassing," Clara said. Because if the land is Walker land, he's trespassing on us, and if the land reverts to the government the way he swears it must, then he is a private company with works on the public domain and no grant, and the same commissioner he's asking to take our section can take his ditch. She jammed a pin in. He has built his whole case on ground that eats him if he wins it. That's why the argument at the gate is stupid. He never meant us to fight about the water. He meant us to fight about anything at all except where the gate is standing. Ethan Walker stared at his wife for about 4 seconds. Then he went for the barn at a run. He was in Ridgeway by 6:30, and Fenn was locking up. "We're closed." "One question." "We're closed, Mr. Walker." "One question, and I'll pay for the lamp oil." Fenn looked at him and sighed the sigh of a man who has been waiting 11 years for something interesting to happen in his office and unlocked the door. It took him 20 minutes with 2 books. "Nothing," he said. "Nothing. No right-of-way, no ditch easement, no reservoir permit, nothing across 14. Company's got a right-of-way across 11 and across the north half of 23. He turned a page and grunted. "Filed in 71 by Amos T. Walker's neighbor and bought up by Hale in 74. But not 14. 14's blank." "You're certain?" "Mr. Walker, I have been certain about blank columns for 40 years. It's the only thing in this office anybody ever needs me for." He shut the book. "Now, you want my opinion, which nobody in this territory has ever once asked for. I do. That gate's been up there since 69 without paper. That means either the company forgot, which they didn't, or somebody had an arrangement with your father, which they did, and it was never written down, which is how everything in this territory got done, and why half my job is grief." Fenn set the book on the shelf. "Handshake water rights. There's 100 of 'em on this creek, and they all die the day the man who shook hands dies. Ethan rode home in the dark, and got there past midnight, and Clara was awake with a lamp and a pot on the stove, and she read his face before he got the door shut. Nothing. Nothing on 14. She sat down hard and put her hand over her mouth, and for a second he thought she was crying, and then he realized she was laughing. "Clara, he's a fool," she said. "He's a brilliant, patient, careful fool, and he has been so busy being clever about the land that he has left his own ditch standing on it, with no paper under it for 17 years. Then we've got him." "No," Clara said, and the laugh went out of her all at once. "We've got a knife. He's got the same knife. Ethan, listen to me. If I go into that room on the 4th of September, and I say your headgate's a trespass, do you know what he does? He shuts it. Permanently. Forever. And he does it legally because a company with no easement has no obligation to deliver, and he takes his gate and his flume off our ground and rebuilds it 400 feet upstream on Section 11, where he has got paper, and then he owns every drop that comes off this mountain, and we own a dry ditch and a moral victory. Then what good is it?" "It's good for exactly one thing," Clara said. "It makes him want to settle. And a man who wants to settle will tell you what he's afraid of." Alma Pruitt came up the road on the 25th of August, in a buggy driven by a hired boy, and she would not come inside, and she would not get down. "Girl, Mrs. Pruitt?" "He's been to see me." Clara's stomach turned over. "When?" "Yesterday evening. Sat right where you're standing and offered me $460 and a written apology." The old woman's mouth was a line. "Said he'd found an error in his clerk's practice. Said he was mortified. Used that word, mortified." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to put it in my hand." Clara didn't say anything. "And he did," Alma Pruitt said, "and I counted it, and it was all there, and then I told him the sworn statement stands." "Mrs. Pruitt, he said that ain't how a settlement works, ma'am, and I said, Mr. Hale, I never signed nothing about a settlement. You give me money you owed me. That ain't a purchase, that's a debt, and I have been paying debts in this county since before you owned a coat." She sniffed. "He went gray, girl. I've never seen a man go gray that fast." Clara let out a breath she'd been holding for 2 days. "He'll go to the others." "He's already gone to the others. He was at Renfro's this morning and the Kittredge place at noon." Alma leaned forward. "6 of 'em took it and signed his paper. 6 of 'em, girl. Kittredge cried when he told me. Said he's got a boy going to Denver for schooling and $400 is $400 and he ain't wrong, and I didn't say a word to him about it, and neither will you. 6. 6 out of 11. You've got 5 counting me, and you've got that fool boy's retraction, and you've got 9 days. Clara stood in the yard and did the arithmetic and felt the whole thing tilt. He didn't do that to save money, she said. No, he did not. He paid out something near $2,000 in one day to buy back statements about a charge he could have argued was an honest error in the first place. Clara looked up. He is not afraid of the assessments. He never was. He's afraid of the pattern. He needs that commissioner to see one man with one bad entry, and not a creek full of people who've been shaved for 6 years. That's about the shape of it, said Alma Pruitt. Now, you want my advice? Yes, ma'am. He's paid off 6 neighbors filed on your land, shut your water, and bought your husband's brother. That's a man clearing his desk. The old woman gathered her reins. In my experience, a man don't clear his desk unless he's fixing to do something he don't want witnessed. You keep somebody awake at night, girl. The rain started on the 28th. It came on in the afternoon, and it did not stop, and by the second day, Ethan was up before 4 and gone before Clara had the stove going, and by the third day, he came in at noon, soaked through, and sat down without taking his coat off, which he had never once done. The draw's running. That's good. That's the trouble. He rubbed his face with both hands. Clara, that gate's been shut 9 days. Everything that come down off that mountain in 9 days is sitting behind it, and now there's 3 days of rain on top, and there's an old check dam above the head gate my father built in '66 out of rock and timber and hope, and it was never meant to hold anything for more than a week. Clara set down the cup. Say it plain. If that dam goes, it takes the head gate with it, and everything behind it comes down the main channel at once. What's below the main channel? My east draw. 200 head. What else? Ethan didn't answer. Ethan, what else is below the main channel? The Tilly place, he said. And the Kittredges. And the lower road into town. Clara was up out of the chair. Then you have to tell them. Tell who Kittredge signed Hale's paper 4 days ago, and won't open his door to me, and Wallace Tilly has been standing on that gate with a rifle since the 22nd, then tell Ruth. Clara. Ethan Walker. Her voice came out of her like something snapped. There is a woman in a house below a dam, and she has a 6-year-old boy in it, and you are standing in my kitchen doing arithmetic about who spoke to you last week. Get on a horse. He was gone in 4 minutes. He got as far as the Tilly place, and Ruth was already at the door with her shawl over her head, and she said before he could open his mouth, Wallace won't come off that gate. Ruth. He's been sleeping up there. 9 nights. He won't come home. She had Sam on her hip, and the boy was too big to be carried, and she was carrying him anyway. He come down Tuesday for dry clothes, and he wouldn't look at me. Same as he wouldn't look at your wife in the street. That's the whole of my husband, Mr. Walker. He's a good man who don't look at people. Ruth, that dam above the gate. I know about the dam. I grew up on this creek. Her chin came up. How long? If it keeps on like this tonight, tomorrow. Ruth Tilly shut her eyes for a second. Take the boy, she said. What? Take Sam to your wife. I'm going up the ditch road. Ruth. He's my husband, and he's sitting on a gate that's going to kill him, she said. And I have spent 11 years being the kind of woman who don't make a scene, and I have watched where that gets a person, and I ain't doing it again. He put her on the wagon seat himself. It went at 9 that night. Clara heard it from the house. She was to say afterward that she did not hear a crash, that there was no sound like a house falling down, that what she heard was the creek. Go from a noise she'd stopped noticing to no noise at all for about 6 seconds, and that the silence was the worst thing she ever heard in her life. Then it came. Harlan got to the yard at 9:30 with his hat gone, and one stirrup gone and blood on his mouth. Where's Ethan? He's not with you. He was on the ditch road, Clara. He was on the ditch road when she went. Clara Whitmore Walker took hold of the porch post and held it. Where? Above the flume. He went up with Ruth Tilly to get them men off the gate, and I was behind him, and the whole face of it come out at once, and I lost him." Harlan was shaking. "There's men in the water. I seen at least two. Tom Creed's horse come past me with no Tom Creed on it." Sam Tilly was standing in the doorway in a nightshirt with a biscuit in his hand. Clara looked at the boy. Then she looked at Harlan. "Go in the house," she said to Sam. "Sit at the table. Do not move off that chair for anybody but me." "Yes'm." She came down off the porch. "Harlan, listen to every word, and don't say one back to me until I'm done. There's 200 head in the east draw, and there's 4 houses below the main channel, and there is not one thing on this earth we can do about the water that's already gone. It's gone. It's past the flume. It'll be at the Kittredges inside of 10 minutes, and there's no horse alive that beats it." "Then what?" I said. "Don't talk." She had her hand out flat. "It's not the first wave that takes the houses. The dam's out, but the reservoir isn't. There's 9 days of water behind that, and it is coming down that channel all night, and every hour it runs in the main channel is an hour. It's cutting the bank out from under the lower road." She turned. "Your father dug a lateral." Harlan blinked at her. "What?" "Your father dug a lateral ditch off the main channel in 1866. East along the bench above the draw to a stock pond he never finished. It's on the ditch company's own survey map, and it is not on any map since, and I have looked at that map so many times I could draw it with my eyes shut. That thing's been dry 20 years. It's grown over. It's caved in half a dozen. How wide? 10 foot at the head, maybe. How deep at the head? Clara, it's ruined. How deep at the head? Harlan. 4 foot? He shouted. 4 foot, and there's a rock sill across the mouth of it. My father laid in to keep it from taking the whole creek, and it is still there. I've stood on it. And then he stopped, because he had heard what he'd just said. "You want to break the sill?" he said. "I want to break the sill." "Clara, if you open that lateral, you're sending 9 days of water across the east draw." "Yes." "That's 200 head." "Yes. That's the herd. That's the whole outfit. That's every dollar Ethan's got standing on 4 legs, and you're going to drown it." "Some of it," Clara said. "Not all. Cattle swim better than men give them credit for, and the bench is high on the north side, and they'll run for it. And I would rather lose 100 head of beef than the Tilly house with a woman and 4 houses of people below it." Harlan Walker stood in the rain with his hands hanging. "He'll never forgive it," he said. "He might not. You've been married 6 weeks. 7, said Clara. "Get the powder." They had 11 pounds of black powder in the barn for stumps, and they used all of it. It took them 2 hours to get up the bench with a lantern that kept going out, and Harlan did the work at the sill because he had done stumps since he was 14, and Clara held the light, and twice he stopped and said, "Clara," and twice she said, "Set it." When it went, it was not much of a sound. It was a flat thud, and then a long grinding, and then the lateral took the creek the way a dry throat takes water. They stood on the bench and watched it go east. "How long?" Harlan said. "Until it stops." "Clara, I don't know how long," she said. "I don't know if it holds. I don't know if the bank cuts through in an hour and puts the whole thing back in the main channel with the bench gone on top of it. I have never done anything like this in my life, and I read it in a survey map." Her hands were shaking so hard she put the lantern down. "Harlan, I have made a decision about another person's land and another person's cattle and another person's father's ditch, and I did it in 9 minutes. And if I am wrong, you ain't wrong. You don't know that." "No, ma'am," Harlan said. "But my father dug that lateral because he was scared of exactly this, and then he never finished it because it never happened, and tonight it happened. And the only person on this mountain who knew that ditch was there was a school teacher from Baltimore who read a map." He wiped his face. "I've lived here my whole life, and I forgot it existed. So no, you ain't wrong. You're just the only one that was paying attention." They found Ethan at 4 in the morning, a mile and a half below the flume, and he was alive. He was alive because Wallace Tilly had put a rope on him. That was the part Clara could not get her mind around. For a long time after that, the man who would not look at her in the street had been standing on the gate when it went, and had gone into the water on purpose, and had gotten a rope around a man he'd been holding a rifle on for 9 days. Ruth had them both by the time Clara got there. She had Wallace sitting up against a wagon wheel with his arm broken in 2 places, and she had Ethan flat on his back with her coat over him, and she was talking to both of them at once in a voice like a woman reading a grocery list. "He's breathing. He come to twice. He said your name once and something about a gate." Ruth: "Don't." Ruth Tilley didn't look up. "Don't say anything nice to me right now, I'll come apart." Ethan opened his eyes at 4:30. He looked at Clara for a long moment, without any recognition at all, and then something came back into his face, and she watched a man remember his own life. "Clara." "I'm here." "The gate." "The gate's gone. The dam went with it." "The draw." "Ethan." She put her hand flat on his chest. "Listen to me and then you can be angry." "The herd." "I put the creek through your father's lateral," Clara said. "I blew the sill with 11 pounds of powder, and I sent 9 days of water across the east draw, and I do not know how many head are standing this morning, and I did it to keep it out of the main channel and off 4 houses, and I made the decision myself, and I did not have time to ask you." Ethan Walker lay in the mud and looked at his wife. "How many houses?" he said. 4. The Tilleys, the Kittredges, 2 on the lower road. Anybody in 'em?" "Ruth's boy is sitting at our kitchen table." He shut his eyes. "Then it was the right call," he said. "Ethan, it was the right call, and you don't need me to say so, and I'm going to say so anyway out loud, because I've been laying in a creek bottom half the night, thinking about how I never say nothing out loud." He got his hand up and put it over hers, and it weighed about as much as a wet rope. "Woman, I have spent 25 years being the only one who decides, and I have been so proud of it, and it near killed me, and it never once made anything better. You decided. You decided right. That's som bimbis bemi beminda." He stopped. "Ethan?" "That's the first time since my mother died." Ethan said, "That anybody's carried a thing with me." They lost 61 head. He counted them himself 2 days later walking because he would not be carried and would not stay in the bed, and Clara walked behind him with her arms folded and let him do it. 61 out of 206. The bench had held on the north side just like she'd said, and 145 head of Walker cattle had run uphill in the dark and stood on high ground all night and come down in the morning looking mildly put out. 61, Ethan said. "Yes. That's..." He did the arithmetic. "That's better than $900. "I know exactly what it is," Clara said. "I've had the number since Tuesday, and I've been waiting for you to be strong enough to hear me say it." Clara: $930 at the fall price. And it's the difference between making the note and not making it, and I have been sick over it for 3 days. Clara: "What?" Ethan Walker turned around. "Thank you," he said. And Clara Whitmore Walker, who had faced down a hotel clerk and a land office and 11 households and a man with a rifle, put her face in her hands and cried in a cow pasture. The lower road washed out anyway, 400 feet of it clean off the bench on the second night. Nobody died. That was the sentence that went up and down Silver Creek for 4 days in every kitchen and on every porch and across the counter at the Mercantile. Nobody died. And it was said in a particular tone, and Clara understood the tone the first time she heard it. It was the tone of people working something out, because a man had shut a gate on the 22nd of August, and the water had come up behind it for 9 days. And on the 28th of August, the rain had started, and everybody on that creek knew how a dam works, even if they could not have said so out loud, and the arithmetic was not complicated, and it did not require a ledger. Doc Bell said it first, and he said it in the Mercantile with 11 people listening. "I set Wallace Tilley's arm in 2 places," he said. "I set Tom Creed's collarbone. I got a boy from the Kittredge place with a lung full of creek water, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like the sound of him. And I've been doctoring on this creek 19 years, and that dam has been up there the entire time, and it never once come out, because there was never once 9 days of water sitting behind a shut gate on top of it." "Doc, I ain't accusing a soul," Doc Bell said. "I'm a physician. I'm telling you what I set." Victor Hale came on the 1st of September. He came alone, and he came in a buggy because the lower road was gone, and a buggy had to go around by the north bench, which meant 9 extra miles, which meant he had left his house before daylight to be there. He got down without being asked. "Ethan?" Ethan Walker stood on his own porch with his ribs strapped and did not offer his hand. "Mrs. Walker, Mr. Hale, I'd like to say some things, and I'd like to say them standing in the yard where anybody can see me say them, and then I'll go." He took his hat off. "First, Tom Creed is in my employ, and his collarbone is my expense, and it is paid. Wallace Tilley likewise, and his house is his in writing, deeded whatever comes. I had it drawn Monday." "That's fine," Ethan said. "Second, I withdraw the contest. It's wired. Fenn has it. It's dead." Clara did not move. "Third." Hale turned the hat once. "I am told by 4 separate people that this county has decided I drowned the lower road. I want to say to your face that I did not intend it, that I did not think of the dam, and that I have gone over the 9 days about 40 times now, looking for the moment I thought of it, and I cannot find one." He looked up. "And I want to say to your face that it don't matter a damn, because I shut the gate, and a man is responsible for what his gate does." "Yes," said Clara, "he is. So I'll ask you plain, Mrs. Walker, since it's you that decides, what'll it take to end this? You want a settlement. I want to stop being the man who drowned the lower road." "Then you can't have it," Clara said. Hale's head came up. "Ma'am, you have withdrawn a contest you filed. You have paid a bill you owed. You have deeded a house you should never have been able to take away. Every single thing on your list, Mr. Hale, is you giving back something you took." She came down 1 step. "There isn't one item on it that's yours." "Then name one." "On the 4th of September there is still going to be a hearing in Ridgeway." "I've withdrawn." "You've withdrawn your contest," Clara said. "The commissioner's docket doesn't clear because you changed your mind. That entry has a hole in it that's been sitting open since 1868. And it will sit open until somebody stands in a public room and settles it. And if it isn't settled on the 4th, then it is a knife in this family's back for the next 20 years, and any man with a good coat can pick it up." Her voice did not rise. "So we are going to Ridgeway, and you are going to be in that room, and you are going to say out loud on the record in front of a territorial commissioner and every soul on this creek exactly what you said to Harlan Walker on horseback at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of July. Victor Hale stood in the yard for a long moment. "You know what that does to me," he said. "I do. There's 9 men on this creek hauling for my company. There's a bank in Denver holds paper on the ladder H. I know. And if I don't say it, then Harlan Walker says it," Clara said, "and he says it alone with nobody to corroborate him, and he takes every bit of it on his own name, and he is finished in this county forever. And I have thought about that for 3 nights, and I would rather have you both in that room." "Both. Both." Clara's chin came up. "I don't want you ruined, Mr. Hale. That is not a kindness. It's arithmetic. A ruined man on this creek is 9 families without work. And I have met 4 of them, and they have been decent to me, and they don't deserve it. I want you on the record. There is a difference, and you have spent your entire life making certain nobody could tell what it was." Hale looked at her. 60 seconds, he said again quietly. "You've said that. I'll go on saying it." He put his hat on. "Ethan, your wife is going to run this creek in 10 years, and I want it noted that I said so in your yard." "I don't care," Ethan said. "No," Hale said. "I don't suppose you do." He got in the buggy, and then he stopped with the reins in his hands, and he said something none of them expected, and Clara would think about it for the rest of her life. "There's a thing you'll want before the 4th, he said. "And I'd have used it, and now I ain't going to, and I'd sooner tell you than have it come out of my mouth in that room." "Say it," Ethan said. "Your father's patent was issued." Nobody moved. Say that again, Clara said. It was issued, Victor Hale said. June of '69. It went into the mail at Ridgeway, and it never got to this creek. And the reason it never got to this creek is that in June of '69, the mail up this canyon was carried by a boy of 17 named Amos Dury, and it was the summer his mother took sick, and there was a satchel he never finished delivering, and he has kept it in his room above the hotel for 17 years because he was too scared at 17 to say what he'd done. And every year after that, it got harder. Hale gathered the reins. He told me in July, it's why I filed when I filed. It's why I got in line first. He has it, Ethan said. He has a satchel. I never saw inside it. I never asked to. Hale looked straight ahead. And then he witnessed your brother's affidavit for me on the 11th, and I let him. And that is the single worst thing I have done in 30 years in this territory. Mr. Walker and I have done a great many things, and I want you to understand that I know exactly which one it is. He drove out. Ethan Walker stood on his porch with his ribs strapped and his herd short 61 head, and 4 days between him and a hearing, and he started to laugh, and it hurt him, and he kept doing it. Amos Dury, he said. Amos Dury raised your hotel rate. He did, said Clara. Amos Dury has had the patent to this ranch in a satchel under his bed since I was 27 years old. Yes. Clara. Get the wagon, said Clara Whitmore Walker. Amos Dury saw them come in and went for the back office. He did not get there. Mr. Dury, Clara said. He stopped with his hand on the doorframe. We're full. I don't want a room. Then I can't help you. You raised my rate to $2 on the 14th of July, Clara said, and I have never once mentioned it to you since, and I want you to understand that I am not here about that either. Dury's shoulders came up around his ears. Ethan, he said. Whatever she's here about. Don't talk to me, Ethan said. Talk to her. She's the one that'll be reasonable. Mr. Dury, is there a satchel in your room? The clerk's face went the color of paper. Who told you that? Is there a satchel in your room? Who told you? Victor Hale, Clara said. And Amos Dury made a sound like something coming loose in a wall. He got behind the counter. He put both hands flat on it. He said, he swore. He swore to me on his mother he'd never say a word. And then he heard himself, and his mouth shut so hard his teeth clicked. So it's true, Ethan said. Ethan. 17 years. Ethan, listen. 17 years I have been getting up in the dark on land I didn't know I owned outright, and you have been down here renting rooms and taking my brother's money at cards and raising a rate on my wife. Ethan came up against the counter, and Clara put 2 fingers on his sleeve, and he stopped like a horse on a rein. Ethan. I'm all right. You're not. Go stand by the window. Clara. Go stand by the window and let me talk to him, because you are going to say something true, and I need him whole. Ethan Walker went and stood by the window. Clara turned back to the counter. Amos Dury was crying, which she had expected, and it did not move her 1 inch, which surprised her. Mr. Dury, I'm going to say what I understand, and you'll correct me where I'm wrong. In June of 1869, you were 17 years old, and you carried the mail up this canyon. Yes, ma'am. Your mother was sick. She was dying, Dury said. She was dying all that summer, and there wasn't a soul to sit with her but me. And I'd take the satchel out, and I'd get 4 miles up the canyon, and I'd turn around because she'd get to where she didn't know the house, and she'd go out in the road in her shift, and one time a freighter near ran her down, and I... How many pieces? Ma'am, how many pieces of mail are in that satchel? He wiped his face with the back of his wrist. 9, he said. Clara felt the floor shift a little under her. 9. 9, Amos Dury said. I counted them about 4,000 times. You never opened them. No, ma'am, not one. That's... He laughed awful. That's the only thing I got. 17 years and I never opened one. Like that makes a difference. It doesn't. I know it don't. It doesn't make one particle of difference. and you have been telling yourself it does since you were 17 years old, and I imagine it has been the only sentence in your head that let you sleep." Clara put her hands on the counter across from his. "And now I am going to say the second thing. Mr. Dury and you had better hold on to that counter, because in 19 days a man went into a creek, and 400 foot of the lower road went out, and Doc Bell is still not easy about the Kittredge boy's lungs, and none of that is yours. But 2 months ago, Victor Hale sat you down and had you witness a notarized affidavit against this family, and you signed it, knowing what was under your bed." Amos Dury stopped breathing for a second. "I want to hear you say why," Clara said. "Because he knew," Dury whispered. Louder. "Because he knew," Dury said. "And once a man like that knows a thing about you, you don't ever get to say no to him again about anything. Not ever. Not one time for the rest of your natural life. And I'd like to see anybody in this town do different." Ethan spoke from the window without turning around. "Amos." "Ethan." "How much did he pay you?" "He never paid me a dime," Amos Dury said. "That's the whole thing. That's the whole entire thing. He never paid me nothing, and he never threatened me, and he never said one hard word to me in his life. He just knew, and I went ahead and did it, and he didn't even have to ask twice." Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Clara said, "Go get the satchel." "Ma'am, Mr. Dury, in 3 days, there is a hearing in Ridgeway. You will either bring that satchel down those stairs right now, or a territorial commissioner will send a marshal up them on Friday, and I will tell you which of those 2 men you'd rather be." He went up. He was gone 4 minutes, and Ethan did not move from the window the entire time, and Clara did not take her eyes off the stairs, because she was not certain, she was genuinely not certain that he would not go out a back window and be 40 miles gone by dark. He came down with it. It was canvas, and it was rotten at the strap, and it had a dead man's initials on the flap, and Amos Dury set it on the counter of the Silver Creek Hotel and put both hands over his face. "I'd like to be there," he said. "On the 4th. I'd like to say it in the room." "You'll be there," Clara said, "because I intend to see to it." "I mean, I'd like to." "Mr. Dury," said Clara, "I have not got one thing left over to give you, and I am not going to lie and say I'm glad. Ask me again in 5 years. There were 9 pieces. Fenn laid them out on his counter in Ridgeway the next morning, and made both of them stand back while he did it, and he put on a pair of spectacles Clara had never seen, and he handled each one the way a man handles something that might still bite. "2 of these are for people that are dead," he said. "Fenn. One's for a woman in Kansas. One's a bank draft, and God help everybody, it's for $80 and it ain't worth the paper now." He turned the 4th one over. "This one's a patent." Ethan's hand closed on the edge of the counter. "Read it." "Hold on. Fenn, Mr. Walker, I have got the seal of the General Land Office in my hand, and I am not going to be hurried by a rancher." He held it up to the light. "Homestead Certificate. Amos T. Walker. Section 14. Signed by the Recorder for the President, and issued the 11th of June, 1869. Clara let out a breath. "Then it's over," Ethan said. "No, it ain't. Fenn, sit down both of you, because this is going to hurt." Fenn set the paper flat. "You have got a patent that has been out of federal custody for 17 years in a private satchel in the possession of the man who witnessed the affidavit against you. You know what Hale's lawyer would have said about that if he was still in this. He'd have said you made it. He'd have said it in 11 words, and the commissioner would have had to consider it." "Hale's withdrawn." "Hale withdrew his contest," Fenn said. "The government don't have to be a party to a thing to care about it. That's why the docket's still standing, ain't it? That's what your wife told you." "Yes," said Clara. "Then you understand me. That commissioner has got to be able to write down that this patent is real without taking one single soul in this county's word for it. How does he do that? He does it." Fenn said, "If there's a record of issue in Washington, and there ain't because the column's blank, and the reason it's blank is that whoever kept this book in '69 wrote the number in the transmittal register instead of the tract book, which happened about 400 times in this territory and drove me to drink for 2 years. Clara was already moving. Where is the transmittal register? Basement. Is it here? Mrs. Walker, everything is here. That's the tragedy of my profession. Fenn took his spectacles off. 69's in a crate under a leak I have written 3 letters about. Then get a lamp, said Clara. They were down there 11 hours. Fenn quit twice. The first time Clara talked him back. The second time he sat on a crate and said, "Ma'am, I'm 62. And Ethan Walker with his ribs strapped and his hands raw and a face like a man who had already lost. Said, Mr. Fenn, my father dug that ditch by hand, and I never asked him one question about his life, and now I can't." Fenn got up and got another lamp. They found it at 9:10 at night. Volume 4, page 161. A column of numbers in a hand that had died before either of them was grown. Patent 417, Walker, Amos T, Section 14, T9SR 79. W transmitted June 14th, 69, Silver Creek via Dury. There, said Fenn, and put his finger on it, and his finger was shaking. There it is. Number matches the certificate. And it's got the carrier's name on it, which I have never once in 40 years been glad about until this minute. Clara sat down on the floor of a land office basement in her good dress. Say it out loud, she said. I want to hear a government man say it. Say what? Whose land is Section 14? It's his, said Fenn. It has been his since the 11th of June, 1869, and it was never the government's to take back, and any man that filed a contest on it filed on nothing. And I will say so in that room on Friday if it costs me my post. Ethan Walker sat down on the floor beside his wife and put his head back against the wall and did not say anything at all for a long time. Ethan! Yes, ma'am. You've gone quiet. I'm thinking about my father. Tell me. He died in the spring of '80, and the last thing he ever said to me was about the fence on the North Line, and I was sore about it for 6 years. Ethan's voice was flat and careful. He never knew. He thought the patent was coming. He waited on it. He'd walk down to the hotel on mail days. I remember him doing it, and I never once asked why. Ethan. 11 years he walked down there and asked that boy was there anything for Walker, and that boy said no, and my father come home and never said a word to nobody about it because he'd have been ashamed to say out loud he was worried. Clara put her hand on his. That is the exact same man, she said, who lay in a creek bottom last week and thought about how he never says anything out loud. Ethan Walker laughed once, and then he stopped laughing, and Fenn found a reason to go check the lamp at the far end of the basement and stayed there a good while. The hearing was held in the Odd Fellows Hall in Ridgeway because the courtroom would not hold them. They came from the whole creek. They came from 40 miles. They came because a road had washed out, and a man had gone into the water, and because the story of the woman off the coach had traveled every direction it could travel in 7 weeks. And Clara stood at the back door of that hall at 9 in the morning and looked at the crowd and felt something come up in her throat that she had to swallow twice. They're all here, she said. They are. Ethan, some of them are the same people. I know it. The woman on the porch who said a woman that age, she's in the 4th row with a basket. You want me to have her put out? No, Clara said. I want her to sit there and hear the whole thing. The commissioner's name was T.R. Ballard, and he was a small, dry man from Denver who had been doing this for 19 years and had, by his own admission in the first 2 minutes, no patience whatsoever. This docket, he said, is a contest against Homestead Entry Section 14 filed by the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company. The company has withdrawn. I have the withdrawal. I want to know why there are 200 people in this room. Clara stood up. Because the withdrawal doesn't settle it, sir. And you are? Clara Walker. I keep the books. Somebody in the back laughed, and Ballard's head came around and the laugh died. Go on, Mrs. Walker. The entry has been carried as unpatented in the Ridgeway Tract Book for 18 years. Until that is corrected on the record, any man in this territory can file the same contest again next spring and the spring after, and this family will spend the rest of its life defending a hole in a book. I would like the record corrected, today, in front of everyone who has already heard the accusation, because a correction that nobody hears is not a correction." Ballard looked at her for a moment. "That," he said, "is a better statement of the matter than I generally get from attorneys. Sit down, ma'am. Mr. Fenn, get up here." Fenn testified for 40 minutes, and he testified like a man who had been waiting his whole professional life for one room to care about a transmittal register. He put the certificate in Ballard's hand. He put volume 4 on the table and opened it to page 161 and made the commissioner read the line himself out loud, which Ballard did, and when he got to transmitted June 14th, 69, Silver Creek via Dury, he stopped. "Via Dury." "Yes, sir." "Is there a Dury in this room?" Amos Dury stood up. It took him 3 tries. He got as far as the front, and he could not make his voice go, and Ballard said not unkindly, "Take your time, son," and Amos Dury, who was 34 years old and had not been called son by anybody since 1869, put both hands on the table and told it. He told about the satchel. He told about the 4 miles up the canyon and turning around. He told about his mother going out in the road in her shift. He told about the first year when he was going to bring it back and couldn't, and the second year when he understood he never would, and the 11 years after that when Amos Walker came down on mail days and asked was there anything, and he said no, and he said no, and he said no. "How many times?" Ballard said. "Sir, how many times did that man ask you?" "I don't know, 20, 30. "And you said no." "I said no every time," Amos Dury said. "And he'd say, 'Well, all right, Amos,' and he'd tip his hat at me, every single time. He tipped his hat at me 30 times. The room was so quiet, Clara could hear a horse outside. "And in July of this year," Ballard said, "you witnessed an affidavit against this family." "Yes, sir." "Knowing what was in your room?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" "Because Mr. Hale knew about the satchel," Dury said, "and once a man knows a thing like that about you, you ain't got a no left in you. Not for him, not for anything." Ballard wrote for a while. "Mr. Dury, you understand. I can refer this to the United States Attorney." "Yes, sir." "You understand there's no statute that's going to save you from a mail charge if he wants one." "Yes, sir. Dury's voice broke apart. "I'd be obliged if he did, sir. I've been waiting on it since I was 17, and I've got so I can't hardly stand up under the waiting." He sat down, and Ethan Walker, who had said in a hotel 4 days earlier that he had spent 17 years getting up in the dark on land he didn't know he owned, stood up in the middle of a territorial hearing and said, "Sir, may I say one thing about that man?" "Say it." "He was a boy with a dying mother and no help," Ethan said. "And this whole county watched her die and let a 17-year-old do it alone, and I was 27 that summer, and I never once went down there. I want that in the record, too." Amos Dury put his face in his hands and did not get it out again for a quarter of an hour. Harlan came next. He had asked to. That was the thing Clara held on to afterward, that nobody made him, that he had come to her on the 2nd of September and said, "Ma'am, I want to go before Hale does. I don't want folks thinking he offered me up. I want it to be me that says it first." He stood up in front of 200 people who had known him since he was born, and he said it. He said about the cards. He said about the horse deal in Ridgeway. He said about the woman in Ridgeway out loud in front of his brother and his brother's wife and Alma Pruitt and Reverend Pike, and his voice went to pieces 4 separate times, and he got it back 4 separate times. He said the $620. He said the 11th of July in the notary. And then Ballard said, "Mr. Walker, the affidavit you signed, was it true?" And Harlan said, "Yes, sir, every word." The room made a sound. "Explain that." "There wasn't a family on that place," Harlan said. "That's true. That's the thing I can't get out from under. He never asked me to lie one time. He asked me to swear to the worst true thing about my own house, and I done it for money, and there ain't a way to say that so it sounds better." And the 14th of July. "Sir, there's a woman who came off a coach in this territory on the 14th of July. Ballard said, "and I have now had that date read to me 11 times this morning. What happened on the 14th of July?" Harlan Walker looked at Clara. "He come to the ranch at 6 in the morning," he said. "Mr. Hale, he sat his horse. He said, 'Harlan, if you take that woman to the preacher today, I'll have to call in the 620, and I'd sure hate for your brother to find out that way.' He said that, word for word. I've said it in my head every night since. And then I stood in the street at 11 o'clock in the morning," Harlan said, "and I turned her out in front of the whole town, and she asked me to say it louder, and I did, and I have had to live in the same body as that ever since." Ballard set down his pen. "Mrs. Walker." Clara stood. "Is that an accurate account?" "Yes, sir." "Do you want to add to it?" "I do." "Go ahead." He was 29 years old and frightened and in debt to a man who had made certain he could never say no, Clara said. "That does not excuse it. I want the commissioner to understand I am not standing here to excuse it, that man's decision cost me every dollar I had, and a good deal more than dollars, and I did not sleep for 11 days, and I will carry the 14th of July as long as I live." She paused. "And I want it in the record that he came to me on the 2nd of September unasked, and said he wanted to go first so that nobody would think he'd been offered up. Nobody made him do that. There was nothing in it for him but the ruin of his own name, and he did it anyway. And if a man cannot get credit in this territory for the one hard right thing he does after a lifetime of easy wrong ones, then I don't know what any of us are doing here." Harlan Walker stood in front of 200 people and cried, and this time his brother crossed the floor and put a hand on the back of his neck and left it there. Victor Hale testified last, and he did it standing, and he did not bring a lawyer. "Mr. Hale, you've withdrawn." "I have." "Then you don't have to say a word in this room." "No, sir, I don't." "Then why are you in it?" "Because Mrs. Walker asked me to be," Hale said, "and because I had 4 days to think about what kind of man says no to that, and I didn't care for any of them." He told it. He told about learning of the satchel in July. He told about filing first. He told about the affidavit and the note forgiven and the 6 households he had paid off in 1 day at the end of August, and he did not soften a single one of them. And twice Ballard stopped him and said, "You understand you're testifying against your own interest." And both times Hale said, "Yes, sir," and went on. Then Ballard said the head gate, and the room which had been leaning forward for an hour went absolutely still. "I shut it on the 22nd of August. "On what authority?" "On the ground that the Walker shares were in arrears." "Were they?" Victor Hale was quiet for a moment. "No, sir," he said. "They were not, and they could not have been, because my company has never held a shareholders' meeting and never given 20 days' notice, as our own articles require. And I have therefore been collecting an annual assessment 4 times a year for 6 years from every man on that creek, and it was not a clerk's error whatever I told Mrs. Pruitt. I knew. I have known the whole time." The noise that went through that hall took Ballard 3 strikes of his hand on the table to put down. "And the flood." "I never thought about the dam," Hale said. "I have gone over the 9 days, and I cannot find the moment I thought about it, and I have told the Walkers so, and I'll tell this room the same thing I told them in their yard. It don't matter. I shut the gate. A man is responsible for what his gate does." "There's 400 feet of road gone." "There is." "There's a boy with water in his lungs." "Yes, sir, Kittredge. I've paid Doc Bell through the winter, and I'll pay him past that if it's needed. And I'd have done it whether this hearing happened or not, and I'll say that and let this room believe it or not as it pleases." Ballard sat back. "Mr. Hale, in 19 years, I have never had a man come into one of these rooms and hand me his own throat." "Then you've been lucky in the men, sir." "Why are you doing it?" And Victor Hale said the thing that Clara Walker would think about for the rest of her natural life. "Because it was tidy," he said. "I beg your pardon. That's what she said to me in her yard, sir, and I have not been able to put it down since. She said I didn't do it because I was cruel. I did it because it was tidy." He looked at the table. "I have taken water off men for 30 years, and I have never once raised my voice or broken a law that anybody could point to, and I built a whole life on the difference between those two things. And then a bookkeeper from Baltimore said one word to me in a ranch yard, and there ain't a difference. There never was. I just had better handwriting than the men I took it from. Nobody in that hall said anything at all. 60 seconds, Hale said. If I'd talked to that woman for 60 seconds before I sent a man out to break her in the street, I'd have hired her at any price, and this county'd be a different place, and I would be a different man, and I want that in the record, because it's the only true thing I've got left to give anybody. Ruth Tilley went before the town did. She had not been called. She stood up out of the 5th row with her boy beside her and said, "Sir, may a woman say something?" And Ballard said, "This isn't that kind of proceeding, ma'am." And Ruth Tilley said, "Then I'll be quick," and did not sit down. "There's a thing this room's been dancing around for 2 hours," she said. "Whether there was a family on that land. Well, I've sat at that table. My boys slept in that house. My husband's arm is broke in 2 places, and it got broke because he went in the water after Ethan Walker, and there's men in this room right now that stood on the boardwalk on the 14th of July with their hands in their pockets, my Wallace among 'em, and let a woman get cut in half in the street." Mrs. Tilley, "I'm nearly done, sir." She was shaking. "That woman went under a wagon team for my son 90 minutes after this town did that to her. 90 minutes. And every one of us has had to live with the arithmetic on that ever since. And I have wanted to say so out loud in front of everybody for 7 weeks. And I would like it noted that when I finally did it, it cost me $18 a month and a house, and I'd do it again tomorrow." Wallace Tilley stood up in the row behind her with his arm in a sling. "It don't cost her the house," he said. "It's deeded. And I'd like the commissioner to know I stood on that gate 9 days and didn't look at nobody, and my wife come up that road in the rain to get me off it, and I'm the one ought to be ashamed and not her." Alma Pruitt got up. She was 81, and she used a stick, and it took her a while, and not one person in that hall made a sound while she did it. "I've kept my statement," she said. "He paid me my $460, and I kept my statement because a debt paid ain't a wrong undone. And if there's a soul in this room don't know the difference by now, I can't help them." She looked around at all of them. "And I'd like to say for the record that Clara Walker come to my door and told me the truth about what it would cost me before she asked me for one thing, which is more than any man in this county has ever done, and I have known most of them since they were in short pants." Kittredge stood up. He had taken the money. Everyone in the room knew it. "I signed his paper," he said. 9 days ago, $400 for my boy's schooling in Denver, and I ain't giving it back, and I ain't going to stand here and pretend I'm sorry I took it." His jaw worked. "But my boy's laying in a bed at Doc Bell's with a lung full of that creek, and I have had 4 nights to think about it, and I want the commissioner to know that I have eaten at the Walker table twice this month, and there is a family on that land, and if that's worth anything against a man who took money, I'd like it counted." They stood up for an hour and 11 minutes. Doc Bell, Reverend Pike, the woman from the porch with the basket who stood up and said, "I said a thing about that lady on the 14th of July, and I've thought about it every day since, and I'd like to say in front of her that it was a low, mean thing to say about a stranger," and then sat down and cried into her own hands while the woman next to her held her arm. 9 of them said the same 4 words in different arrangements, "I have eaten there." Ballard let it run. He did not stop one of them. And when the last of them sat, he wrote for a long time, and then he took off his spectacles. "I'm going to say this plain because I have listened to 200 people be plain at me all morning, and it'd be discourteous to do otherwise." He picked up the certificate. Patent 4417 issued to Amos T. Walker on the 11th of June, 1869. It is verified in the transmittal register, and I have satisfied myself as to the record. Title in Section 14, passed out of the United States 17 years ago, and it has been the property of the Walker family every single day since. There was never a thing to contest. This docket is dismissed, and the Ridgeway Tract Book will be corrected before I leave this building. The hall came apart. Ballard hit the table. "I'm not done." They sat. The testimony I have taken on the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company is outside this docket, and I intend to forward every word of it to the Territorial Attorney and to the United States Attorney and Mr. Hale. You will want counsel, and you will not want to leave the territory." He set the spectacles down. "And I'll say one more thing, and then I'll go find my dinner. I have sat 19 years of these. I have never once had a room full of people stand up and testify against their own interest. 6 of you took money and said so. 1 of you kept a letter for 17 years and brought it down the stairs. 1 of you handed me his own conduct and asked for nothing. That is not how these go, and I don't entirely know what to make of it, and I have decided that what I make of it is this. Mrs. Walker, would you stand up?" Clara stood. "You asked me for a correction that people could hear." "I did, sir." "They heard it," said T.R. Ballard. "Court's adjourned." They did not go home for 3 hours. She could not get out of the hall. That was the thing Clara could not have imagined in any of the 11 days on the coach, or the 7 weeks after that she would stand in a doorway in Ridgeway and be unable to leave a room because 200 people wanted to put their hands on her sleeve. Ruth Tilley got to her first and did not say anything at all, just held on. Alma Pruitt got to her second and said, "Come Tuesdays, I'll teach you what's worth knowing about every soul on that creek, and it'll take about 9 years. Kittredge got to her third and could not look at her and said, "Ma'am, my boy," and Clara said, "Send me word tonight either way. I'll come sit with him." And Kittredge said, "Ma'am, I took the money." And Clara said, "I know what you took. Send me word." And at some point in all of it, she looked across the hall and found Ethan standing against the wall by the window with his hat in his hands, not moving, watching her. He had been there, she realized, the entire time. Victor Hale caught them at the wagon. "Mrs. Walker." "Mr. Hale, I'll not keep you. There's a thing I want to do, and I want to do it in daylight in front of your husband." He held out a folded paper. "That's a deed of easement, right of way for the head gate and the flume and 600 feet of ditch across Section 14, granted by you to the Company Perpetual in exchange for $1 and a covenant of delivery to the Walker place that can't be suspended for any cause, but a lawful assessment lawfully voted." Ethan didn't take it. "You're giving me the whip hand on your own ditch." "I'm giving it to your wife," Hale said, "because in about 4 months I am going to be in a room with a federal attorney explaining 6 years of assessments. And the only thing standing between 9 families on that creek and no work at all is whether somebody who understands a ledger is willing to keep the water running while I'm doing it." Clara took the paper. "I'll read it tonight. That's all I'd ask." "Mr. Hale." "Ma'am, you could have burned that satchel," she said. "You knew where it was for 7 weeks. Nobody on this earth but Amos Dury would ever have known." Victor Hale put his hat on. "I thought about it," he said. "For about a day and a half in July, I thought about it a great deal, and then I watched a woman get off a coach and stand up in the street and ask a man to say it louder." He gathered the reins. "I have never in my life seen anybody do that, Mrs. Walker. I've spent 30 years around men who'd have died before they made somebody say it louder. That stayed with me, and it's going to go on staying with me, and I expect that's the bill." They got home at 9 that night. Ethan put up the horses, and Clara lit one lamp, and neither of them said anything for a while because there was nothing left in either of them to say it with. Then Ethan came in and stood in the middle of his own kitchen and said, "Clara." "Yes." "I've got something to say, and I've been composing it since Ridgeway, and it ain't come out right one single time." "Then say it badly." "That's what you told Harlan." "It works on walkers," Clara said. He turned his hat once. "You married me over a piece of paper," he said, 7 weeks ago, on a Tuesday in a preacher's front room, and I shook your hand, and I've been glad about that handshake, and ashamed of it in about equal measure every day since." "Ethan, let me get it out." He set the hat on the table. "There ain't any paper anymore. That's what happened today. Ballard said out loud that patent's been good since '69, which means it was good on the 14th of July, which means it was good when I stood in this kitchen and asked you, and it means that ranch was never once in danger, and I could have—" He stopped and started over. "I want to say it plain. There is no reason on God's earth for you to be married to me as of about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Not one. The land's safe. Hale's finished. You could go east on Friday's coach with a name and a story, and nobody in this territory would say one word against you, and I have got $400 from the fall shipping I can put in your hand at the door." Clara looked at him. "Is that your speech?" "That's my speech." "It's a terrible speech." "I know it. It's the worst speech I've ever heard in my life, and you have written me 14 letters, Clara said. And I want you to think for one moment about the fact that the man who wrote the ice comes off the creek in one night, and it sounds like a house falling down, has just offered his wife $400 and a coach seat as a demonstration of affection. Ethan Walker stood there. "I ain't good at this," he said. "No, you're extraordinary at this, on paper. You are the best I have ever read, and I have been in love with you since October, and I did not know your name." She came around the table. "Say the thing you actually want to say, not the honorable one, the other one." Clara. "The other one, Ethan." And Ethan Walker, who had held a mountain together with his 2 hands and his silence, who had not asked a soul for a thing since he was 19 years old, who had gone into a creek and been pulled out on a rope by a man who wouldn't look at him, said, "Don't go." "Louder," said Clara. "Don't go," he said. "Don't get on that coach. Don't go east and don't go anywhere and don't be somewhere I ain't. I have been alone in this house since 1873, and I got so used to it I called it a virtue. And then you opened a drawer and told me not to step on 1872, and I have not had 1 hour since where I wasn't glad you were in the room." His voice went. "I love you. I have loved you since the second letter, and I ain't ever said it out loud to another living soul in my whole life, and I don't know how to do it quiet, so I'm going to do it loud, and I'm sorry." Clara Whitmore Walker put both hands on her husband's face. "Say the name of the mare," she said. "June." "Say what happens in February." "The ice comes off the creek in one night, and it sounds like a house falling down." "Say it again." "Clara, say the last part again." "It sounds," Ethan said, "like a house falling down." "No," said Clara. "It sounds like a house being built. You just never had anybody in it to tell you the difference." And she kissed him in the kitchen, with one lamp lit, and the ledgers still open on the table, and a deed of easement folded in her pocket. 7 weeks and 1 day after a man had turned her out in the road in front of 40 people. He said it 4 more times before morning because she asked him to, and each time it came easier, and somewhere around 3 o'clock he laughed at himself in the dark and said, 25 years, and it turns out a man just has to say it out loud. And Clara said, 25 years, and it turns out a man just has to be asked. The rider came at 8. He was not from Silver Creek. That was the first thing Clara noticed: a good hat, a livery horse, a leather case, and the particular unhurried manner of a man who has never once had to raise his voice to get what he came for. "Mr. Walker Sayre, Colorado Merchants and Stockmen's, Denver." Ethan didn't move off the step. "You've come a ways." "I have. May I speak to you about a note?" "Hale's note." "It's not Mr. Hale's note," Sayre said. "That's what I've ridden 9 extra miles around a washed-out road to tell you. It was assigned to the bank on the 29th of August. Clara felt something go cold at the back of her neck. "Assigned?" she said. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Hale had—" Sayre chose the word carefully. "Mr. Hale had obligations coming due, and he cleared a great deal of paper that week. We hold 11 notes out of this county now, and yours is the largest." "How much?" "$1,140 principal and interest at 10 from the 1st of March, $1,204.60 on the 15th of September." "That's 11 days, Ethan said. "That's 11 days. "Mr. Sayre." Clara came down off the step. 2 days ago, a territorial commissioner heard testimony that Mr. Hale's company defrauded this creek for 6 years. There will be a federal action. If that note came out of the same hand, it didn't, ma'am. Sayre was not unkind about it. "I read the wire from Ridgeway before I came. Whatever Mr. Hale did with his water that note is clean. Your brother-in-law's signature, and your husband's both given for value in a bad winter, and the bank paid cash for it in good faith. There isn't a court in this territory that unwinds it." "I know," Clara said. Then you understand my position. I understand it perfectly, and I'd like you to understand mine. We shipped in the middle of a flood. We're 61 heads short of what we counted on in March. I'm sorry to hear it. Will the bank extend to spring? No, ma'am. 60 days. No, ma'am. Sayer took his hat off, which cost him nothing, and he did anyway. I'll tell you plain because you've been plain with me. My directors have got 11 pieces of paper out of a county where a water company just came apart in a public hearing. In 30 days, every one of my colleagues in Denver will know it. If I extend one note on this creek, I'll extend 11, and the bank won't have it. He put the hat back on. 1204.60 on the 15th at the hotel in Silver Creek, 10 in the morning. If it isn't paid, I file on the security. Which is the whole outfit, Mrs. Walker, not the east section, everything. He wrote out. Ethan stood there a long moment. Well, he said, that's about right, ain't it? Won the land Friday, lose it the 15th. Don't. I ain't feeling sorry for myself. I'm saying the arithmetic. Then say the arithmetic to me, and not to the road, because the arithmetic is mine. Clara was already going in. Fall shipping. 411 if Callahan pays what he said. He'll pay what he said. He's afraid of me now. What's in the house? $62. Then we are $531 short in 11 days, Clara said, and I know exactly where every dollar of it is. Where? In Victor Hale's ditch company, where it has been sitting since 1880. She had the articles of incorporation on the table before she took her hat off. Article 4. Assessments by vote in annual meeting 20 days notice. He's never held one, so every assessment for 6 years is void on its face, and every dollar over the lawful annual rate is money the company holds that isn't the company's. Clara, we've got 11 days. You can't give 20 days notice in 11 days. Article 6, Clara said, and turned the page and put her finger on it. A special meeting shall be called by the President upon written petition of shareholders holding not less than 1/3 of the outstanding shares upon 5 days' notice. Ethan sat down. 5 days. 5 days. How many shares are out? 240. Hale holds 101. I have counted them 4 times. And I want you to hear this next part twice, Ethan, because it is the single best thing I have found in 7 weeks in that man's paper. She looked up. He never took a majority. He has 101 shares out of 240, and he has run that creek like a king for 11 years because not one soul ever read the articles. Then 1/3 is 80. 80 shares in 5 days from a creek where 6 households took his money 9 days ago. Clara pinned her hat back on. Hitch the wagon. They rode the creek for 3 days. Alma Pruitt gave her 22 shares before Clara finished the sentence and then made her sit down and eat something. Wallace Tilley had 4 and signed with his left hand because his right was still in the sling, and it took him a while, and Ruth stood behind his chair the whole time with her hand on his shoulder, and neither of them said anything about it. Old Silas Renfro, who had been overcharged 5 times in 1 year and bought off with 40-cent hay, met them at the gate and said, I ain't signing nothing. And Clara said, then don't. But I'd like to know the figure. What figure? The figure he paid over the market for your hay that year. You've carried it around a long while, and I don't imagine you've ever said it out loud. Renfro's mouth worked. $61, he said. And what did he take off you in assessments? 280. Yes, said Clara. Mr. Renfro, he did not buy your hay. He bought your quiet, and he got it at about 22 cents on the dollar, and he has been telling that story in his own head for years, as a kindness. He did you. Silas Renfro signed for 9 shares and did not say one word more, and Clara heard afterward that he did not sleep that night either. The 6 who had taken Hale's money were harder. Kittredge signed first and said, I'll not be worse than I already am, and gave her 11. And then he stood in his own doorway and said the thing she had been dreading for 4 days. Doc's got my boy sitting up. He is. He is, ma'am, and I want to say... Kittredge's face went. Doc says the lung's holding. He says another 2 weeks and he'll be running. Clara had to put her hand on the doorframe. Say it again. He's going to be all right. Mr. Kittredge, I have been carrying that boy since the 28th of August. I know it, ma'am, Kittredge said. So's the whole creek. Doc's told about 40 people you sent up broth every day for 2 weeks, and never once come in the house because you thought I wouldn't want you to. That isn't why. I know that too, said Kittredge. By the evening of the 7th, she had 71 shares. She needed 80. There's 9 on this creek won't open a door to me, she said at the table, and I've been at it 3 days, and I have run out of doors. There's mine, Ethan said. Yours are counted, 4. There's Harlan's. Clara looked up. Harlan's got shares. 2. Come to him same as mine come to me out of our Father. Ethan turned his cup. I've been sitting on that for 3 days, Clara, and I want to tell you why, and I don't come out of it well. Tell me, because if he signs that petition, then when it's read out in the meeting, there's going to be men in that room that stand up and say, a man who swore a false affidavit for money don't get to sign anything. Ethan's jaw set. And I have been protecting him from that, and I did not ask him whether he wanted protecting, which is the exact thing I have done to that boy since he was 9 years old, and I have got to stop. Then go ask him. He's in the barn. Then go to the barn, Clara said, and this time come back with your knuckles whole. Harlan signed. He signed, and then he said, Ethan, there's a thing I want to do, and you're going to fight me on it. Say it. I want off the deed. No. Ethan. No, and I put us here. Harlan slammed his hand flat on the workbench. Every dollar of that note is mine. Every dollar. The cards, the horse, the woman in Ridgeway, you never took a dime of it, and you signed for all of it because I asked you at a bad time, and you have never once in your life said no to me, and look where it's put us. I want off. Sign the whole thing to your wife if you like. She's the only one of us that's earned it. You're staying on the deed, Ethan said. Why? Because our father put both our names in his will, and I ain't taking a dead man's decision away from him just because you've got a bad night. That ain't a reason. Then here's the reason. Ethan's voice came up for the first time in weeks. You stood up in front of 200 people and said the worst true thing about yourself out loud, and you did it before Hale could, and you did it with nothing in it for you. There ain't a man in that hall would have done it. I wouldn't have done it. You're the only walker that's ever proved a damn thing about his own character in a public room, and I am not going to let you sign it away in a barn at 9 o'clock at night because you feel bad. Harlan Walker stood there. You're going to make me live in it, he said. Yes. That's harder than letting me go. Yes, Ethan said. It is. 73. Clara got the last 7 on the morning of the 9th, and she got them from a source she had not once considered, and it came in the form of a letter carried out from Silver Creek by a boy on a mule. Mrs. Walker, I hold 7 shares in my own name, come to me from my father, which I have never voted in 17 years, because I have never once in my life been to a meeting of anything. They are yours to petition with, and I would take it as a kindness if you would use them. And if my name on that paper does you harm, you are to strike it off, and I will not hold it against you, and I will understand. A. Dury. Clara read it twice, and then she went and stood in the yard for a while. What is it? Ethan asked. 80, she said. The first lawful shareholders' meeting in the history of the Silver Creek Ditch and Water Company was held on the 14th of September in the Odd Fellows Hall in Silver Creek, and Victor Hale was not in it. He sent a written proxy and a letter, and the letter was read out loud at Clara's insistence over the objection of 2 men who said it wasn't proper. To the shareholders. I am detained in Denver with counsel and will not be at your meeting. I will not vote my 101 shares. I have instructed that they be recorded as present and not voting so that they cannot be said to have carried or defeated anything you decide. I have run this company for 11 years without ever once asking any of you what you thought, and it seems to me the only honest thing I have left to do with 101 shares is to sit down with them. V. Hale. The room did not know what to do with that. Neither did Clara, and she was to think about it many times after. They voted the assessments void. They voted refunds in full to every shareholder computed, and read out one by one. and Clara read them because she was the only person in the room who could. And it took her 50 minutes, and nobody moved. Ethan Walker, $390. Alma Pruitt. $460, which she had already been paid, and which she stood up and declined a second time and said, "Put it against Kittredge's boy's doctoring," and sat down before anybody could argue. And when the refunds were done, Reverend Pike stood up and said, "I move Mrs. Walker be made secretary and treasurer of this company." Second. "She's a woman," said a man in the fourth row. "She's a bookkeeper," said Alma Pruitt. There ain't never been a lawful meeting of this company either," Alma said, "and yet here we all are in September with our hats off. Sit down, Del Pritchard, before somebody asks you what you were doing on the 14th of July. It carried 131 shares to 8. Clara stood up to accept it and got 2 sentences out. "I'll keep the books open in the hotel dining room every Tuesday from 8 until noon, and any shareholder may see any page of them at any time without asking my leave or giving me a reason." She paused. "I have watched what happens on a creek where one man is the only one who knows the number. It will not happen again while I am the one who knows it." Then she sat down, and Ruth Tilley started it, and it went around that hall for a good while. It left her $440 short on the note with one day. Alma Pruitt came to the ranch that night. "Sit down, girl." "Mrs. Pruitt." "Sit down. And get your husband. I'll not say it twice, and I'll not say it to only half of you." Ethan came in. "I've been to Denver," Alma said. Clara blinked. "When?" "Tuesday and Wednesday. On the cars. I'm 81 years old, and I have not been on the cars since my husband died, and I did not care for it." She set her stick against the table. "I bought your note." Nobody said anything. "I paid Colorado merchants $1,204.60 for it in cash, and I have got it in this bag, and it is mine, and I will now say what I want said, and then you may both talk at once, which I can see you are dying to do." "Mrs. Pruitt." 4%, said Alma Pruitt. "Not 10. Payable in the fall out of shipping, and if the fall is bad, you pay me nothing, and we say no more about it, and it comes due when it comes due and not before. And when I die, it's forgiven, which will not be long, so don't get comfortable." Ethan Walker put his hands over his face. "Now don't do that," Alma said. "I can't abide it." "Ma'am, I said don't." "Why?" Clara said. "Mrs. Pruitt, I have to know why, or I'll be turning it over the rest of my life." Alma Pruitt was quiet for a moment. "My Tom died in March of '81, she said. "And that spring I went to 9 men on this creek about my water, and not one of them would look at me, and I could read a bill just fine, girl. I could always read a bill. What I couldn't do was make a room full of men admit I was in it." Her chin came up. "You made them admit it. You did it in 7 weeks, and you did it after they'd stood in the street and watched you get broke in half, and I have waited 5 years to see somebody do that, and I have decided that $440 is a cheap price for having lived to watch it." The note was paid on the 15th at 10 in the morning at the hotel in cash by Mrs. Alma Pruitt, who insisted on handing it to Sayer herself and made him count it twice. Amos Dury was behind the counter when it happened and did not look up. The United States Attorney for the Territory of Colorado declined to prosecute him in November. It was not luck. Clara had written the letter, and Ethan had signed it, and then Ethan had said, "That ain't enough," and had gone out and gotten 11 more names on it, walking into houses where he had not walked in years to ask for a signature on behalf of the man who had raised his wife's hotel rate. And Clara had watched him go out the door the first morning and understood that her husband had finally learned to ask people for things and had chosen to spend it on Amos Dury. The letter said the delivery had been abandoned by a boy of 17 with a dying mother and no relief. It said that the county had known she was dying and had sent no one. It said the undersigned were of the opinion that the offense had been committed against the Dury family before it was committed by them, and that 17 years of silence had been punishment enough administered by the man himself. The attorney's reply ran 4 lines, and the last one said, in consideration of the extraordinary character of the representations made on his behalf by the injured parties. Amos Dury delivered the other 8 pieces himself. He took 2 weeks, and he did it on his own money, and he went to every address in that satchel that could still be found, and he handed each one over in person, and said what he had done, and he did not make excuses, and 4 of the 8 doors got shut in his face. The 5th was a woman in Kansas named Delphine Ryer, 79 years old, and the letter was from her brother, and her brother had died in 1871. She read it on her porch with Amos Dury standing there with his hat in his hands. Then she said, "Young man, I have not known for 17 years whether he forgave me." "Ma'am, he forgave me," said Delphine Ryer. "It says so. It says so right here in the 2nd line." And she made him sit down and eat a meal, and would not let him leave until dark. And when he got back to Silver Creek, he told it to Clara in the hotel dining room on a Tuesday morning, with the Ditch Company books open between them, and he could not get through it, and Clara did not try to help him. She hired him in January. Assistant clerk of the Ditch Company, $30 a month, books open every Tuesday. "Folks won't like it," he said. "Some won't. Mrs. Walker, I don't." He stopped. "You said ask you again in 5 years. "I did." "It's been 4 months. "Mr. Dury," Clara said, "I have thought about it every one of those months, and here is where I have come out. I do not forgive you for the 11th of July, and I may not ever, and I would be a liar to hand you something I don't have. But you brought a satchel down a flight of stairs when you could have gone out a window, and you gave me 7 shares in a letter and told me to strike your name off if it hurt me. And a person who does those 2 things is exactly who I want counting other people's money in a room I can see. That ain't forgiveness." "No," said Clara. "It's better. It's a job." Victor Hale pleaded in December. He did not fight it. He handed over 11 years of the company's books, unasked, including 4 ledgers nobody had subpoenaed and nobody had known existed, and the restitution came to $9,200, which took the whole of the latter H north of the bench and both his Denver holdings, and he paid it, and he did not sell 1 acre out from under a man who worked for him. 9 families kept their work. That was the term Clara had gone to Denver to argue for, in a room with 3 attorneys and a federal judge in her good dress with her ledgers. "Mrs. Walker, you're the complainant. I'm the treasurer of the company, Your Honor. Those are different jobs, and today I'm doing the second one. You want the man who defrauded you kept solvent. I want 9 households on that creek to have wages in March," Clara said. "And if the price of it is that Victor Hale sleeps in a bed instead of a cell, then I'll pay it, and I'd like the court to know I have thought about it a great deal, and I do not enjoy it." He got 2 years probation, and the loss of nearly everything he had, and he stayed in the county, which surprised everyone. He rebuilt the lower road himself over the winter, and into the spring 400 feet of bench, and then another 600, because once they were at it, the whole of it wanted doing, and Wallace Tilley ran the work, and Hale hauled rock, and the 2 of them did not speak for the first 11 days, and after that they spoke, and by March they ate their dinner together on the bank. He came up to the house one time that whole year. "Mrs. Walker." "Mr. Hale, I'm not stopping. I've got a load on." He didn't get down. "I hear the company's got $180 in hand and no debt." $194. "That's better than I ever ran it." "It is. I know it is." He looked off down the road. "I came to say a thing and then I'll go. I've had a year to think about 60 seconds. Mr. Hale, let me finish it, ma'am. I've been building it a while." He turned his hat once. "I said if I'd talked to you for 60 seconds, I'd have hired you and this county'd be a different place. That was self-flattery, and I've come to know it. I wouldn't have hired you. I'd have looked at you the same way I looked at every soul on this creek for 30 years, which is as a thing that was either in my way or not in my way." He put his hat on. "What I ought to have said is that if I had ever once in my life sat down at a table with somebody who told me the truth about myself, I'd not have needed the 60 seconds. And I'm 58 years old, and the first person who ever did it was a stranger in my own way in a ranch yard, and I have had to make my peace with what that says about the company I chose." Clara didn't answer right away. "Come Tuesday," she said. "Ma'am?" "The books are open Tuesdays 8 to noon in the hotel dining room, and any shareholder may see any page. You still hold 101 shares." "Mrs. Walker, I don't imagine there's a soul in that room wants me in it." "There isn't," Clara said. "Come anyway. And when you're in there, and Silas Renfro won't look at you, and Alma Pruitt says something to you that takes the hide off, sit still and take it and come back the Tuesday after. That's the whole of it, Mr. Hale. That's all repentance has ever been out here. It's showing up in a room where they don't want you for years, until one day they've got used to you." He came the following Tuesday, and the one after, and 41 Tuesdays that year. The ice came off the creek in February. Clara had asked him about it a dozen times since October, and he would never give her more than the letter had, and she had finally stopped asking and had settled in to wait for it. And then it happened at 4 in the morning on a Thursday, and she came up out of sleep with her heart going like a bird. "Ethan, I hear it. What is that?" "That's it." She was already at the window with a quilt around her. "It sounds like the barn's come down." "I told you." "You told me it sounds like a house falling down. You did not tell me a person feels it in the floor." "Couldn't get that part in a letter," Ethan said. "Tried it 4 times. Threw 'em all in the stove." She turned around. "You threw letters in the stove?" "About 20. "Ethan Walker." "Well, I couldn't send you a bad one," he said. "You'd have answered it anyway, and I'd have known." She came back and sat on the edge of the bed and put her hand flat on his chest in the dark. "Say it," she said. "Clara, it's 4 in the morning. You've said it every day since September, and I am not letting a river get out of you what I have to ask for. I love you," Ethan Walker said. "I loved you before I knew what you looked like, and I'll love you when neither one of us can get up that hill, and I would say it in the middle of the street at noon if you wanted it, and I have got so. I mean that." Clara Walker was quiet a moment. "Say that last part again." "I'd say it in the street at noon. In front of everybody. In front of anybody you like." "Ethan," she said, "I'd like to be married in the church." He didn't say anything for a second. "You said you'd never—" "I know what I said. I said it in July when I had been in this town for 11 days and had not one single reason on God's earth to give it anything." She pulled the quilt closer. That was a woman protecting the only thing she had left, and she was right to, and I'd do it again. But they stood up, Ethan. 200 of them stood up in a hall in Ridgeway and said a thing out loud that cost them, and Ruth Tilley lost $18 a month for it, and Kittredge said it, holding $400 of stolen money in his pocket, and that woman from the porch cried into her hands in front of everybody. Her voice went, "They earned it. And I have decided I will not be the kind of person who makes people earn a thing and then never gives it to them." Reverend Pike married them a second time on the 14th of June, and the church would not hold them, so they did it on the steps with the doors open behind, and the whole of the creek in the road. Alma Pruitt sat in a chair somebody carried out for her, and did not get up the entire time, and told 4 separate people to hush. Amos Dury stood at the back and did not come forward, and Clara sent Sam Tilley through the crowd to fetch him up front, and the boy took him by 2 fingers and towed him the whole way, and Dury came because a 6-year-old had hold of him, and a man cannot argue with that in public. Victor Hale stood across the road by the Mercantile with his hat off, and did not come nearer, and nobody asked him to, and nobody told him to go either, and that was the arrangement they had all quietly arrived at over a year, and he seemed to know it better than any of them. Harlan Walker stood up as his brother's witness. He had not touched a card in 9 months. He had told Clara in March at the kitchen table with the fall tally in front of them in 1 sentence, and no drama, "I ain't played since the barn." And Clara had written the date in the margin of the ledger, and never mentioned it again, and he had seen her do it, and neither of them ever said a word about that either. He stood up there and shook the whole time. Pike got to the vows, and Ethan said his, and he said them quiet the way he said everything, and he got to the end of them. And Clara Walker said louder, The whole road heard her say it. Pike stopped. Somebody in the crowd made a sound, and Ethan Walker looked at his wife and understood exactly what she had just done and exactly where she had gotten the word, and Clara watched it go through him like current. "Ma'am," he said. "Say it louder, Mr. Walker." And Ethan Walker turned around on the steps of the church and faced the road. Faced Del Pritchard and the woman with the basket, and the 4 men who had stood on the boardwalk in July, and the hotel clerk, and his own brother, and the man across the road with his hat in his hands, and he said it again, with his whole chest, so that it went up the street and off the fronts of the buildings and out to the people standing on wagon boxes at the back. "I take this woman." "Louder," Clara said. "I take this woman," Ethan Walker shouted, "and I'd have taken her the first day, and I stood on a boardwalk in this town and watched her get broke in half, and I did not open my mouth till it was already done, and I have had 1 year and 11 months to be ashamed of it. And if there's a soul in this road that don't know what she is by now, they ain't been paying attention." The street came apart. Ruth Tilley was crying. Kittredge had his hat over his face. Alma Pruitt hit the ground with her stick 4 times and hollered something nobody could hear, and Sam Tilley, who was 7 now, and understood nothing except that everybody was making noise, screamed with delight, and had to be caught. Clara Whitmore Walker stood on the steps of a church in a town that had once watched her pick up a suitcase in the dirt, and she did not think about the 14th of July at all. That was the thing she noticed later, and told him about that night, that she had gone up those steps braced for it, ready for the ghost of that afternoon to be standing in the road where it had always stood, and it simply had not been there. It had gone sometime in the winter, and she had not been present when it left. The Walker place ran 900 head by the 4th year. That was not the important number, and Clara said so to anybody who brought it up. The important number was 14 households on Silver Creek, with water they could count on delivered under a covenant that could not be suspended on assessments voted by people who had been given 20 days' notice, in writing out of a set of books that any one of them could walk in and read on a Tuesday morning between 8 and noon. She kept those books for 31 years. She taught school again, too, 3 winters, until the county built a proper one and hired somebody younger, and every child who came through that room learned to keep a ledger before they learned much else. And there were people on that creek 50 years later who could not have told you where they learned to check a bill against a receipt, only that it had been a woman who made them do it twice. The girl came in the spring of 1878, and they named her Margaret after Ethan's mother, and the boy came 2 years behind her, and they named him Amos, after his grandfather. And there was exactly 1 man in Silver Creek who ever suspected the name might have been meant to carry 2 things at once, and he never asked, and he cried for an hour in the hotel kitchen the day he heard it. Ethan Walker lived to be 81. He was not a talkative man at the end or at any other time. But he had a thing he did in the last years when the grandchildren were around, and somebody asked how it was. He had come to marry their grandmother, because the story had gotten around the way stories do, in a county with 1 road, and had gotten polished, and had gotten wrong in about 9 places. He would let them tell it wrong. He would sit there and let them get all the way to the end. And then he would say, "No, here's how it went. There was a woman come off a coach in this town with 900 miles on her, and nowhere left on this earth to go, and my brother turned her out in the road in front of 40 people, and she set down her suitcase and squared it with her shoe, and she looked at him, and she said, 'Say it louder.'" And every time one of them would ask why that was the part he told. And every time Ethan Walker would say the same thing. Because that's the whole of it. Everything after that was just the town catching up. Clara outlived him by 6 years. She was buried on the bench above the lateral her husband's father dug in 1866. In the ground she had blown open with 11 pounds of powder to keep 4 houses standing, and the stone did not say "beloved wife" because she had left instructions, and Silver Creek had by then learned to do what Clara Walker's instructions said. It said her name and the 2 dates, and underneath at her direction in letters cut deeper than the rest so they could be read from the road, she asked them to say it louder.